call this Inland Wetlands meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. First, let's stand for the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag and the state of the Union. He's not.
Brian Clark.
Brian's. Just wave, Brian.
Here.
Regular meeting agenda. Item B. Mission discussion decision regarding application IW 2309. Proposed new construction for a single family home in a 100-foot upland review area to be located at 139 Mill Street. Applicant Chia Kim. You have Jim Jones, the engineer.
Jim is here. Jim, you can unmute, and I did make you a co-host, so if you've got to share a screen or anything, go right ahead.
Before you start, so we had some additional information we needed from them that's in your packets. And they supplied everything we needed, the wetlands delineation report from the soil scientist, which we received from Matt Davidson of Davidson Environmental. We needed notes on the plan as to what will be removed from the wetland area, example, the stumps, wood chip, rocks. That has been added to the plan also. Let me see, number of cubic yards of fill being brought onto the property. So no additional fill material will be required for the development of the site. Excavated material from the foundation will be used to fill any excavated cobble removed from the areas. Approximately 100 cubic yards of topsoil will be required for slope stabilization and establishment of lawn. Any topsoil required in addition to which may be processed from that. Let me see, we'll have to be brought onto the site. The cobbles will be removed from the site as required. That's also noted on the plan. They marked any decks, steps, walkways, patios, which were not on the plans before. They have all those noted, depicted. They filled out their statewide inland wetlands. Their statewide inland wetlands report that has been completed. And they will be adding hay bales in addition to the silt fence. So everything has been depicted on the plans. So this, according to Jim and I, this one is now complete, what we needed. So basically, we're just looking for a vote on this. And they also submitted what we needed for a bond. Yes. Yes. All right.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions regarding this application? No. Okay. All right. Then I will entertain.
The engineers know that. Jim, do you have anything to add? Jim Jones? I don't know if you can hear me.
Tracy, you have to unmute and just go ahead and talk.
Brian, can you hear us out there?
Yes, I can.
You're unmuted now. Do you have any?
It was a little iffy at first, but it's better now.
Jim Jones, do you have anything to add? Jim, can you hear us?
Yeah, if they, have answered all of our concerns, I'm okay with the application. They don't have any questions. Then I will entertain a motion to approve application IW 2309 for proposed new construction for single family home. And Chia Campos, for general condition. All those in favor? Brian, you can unmute to vote. Are you in favor of the motion, Brian?
No.
What?
No,
You know which application we're on, correct?
oh, wait. Maybe I didn't hear you. Which, is there something else going on?
On 139 Mill Street.
Oh, hold on. See, I didn't, yeah. You break it up before I didn't hear. Yes. Sorry.
All right, motion approved.
So, wait a minute, Tracy says she has a comment on it. Tracy, you need to unmute. And go ahead and talk. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Trace, you keep mute and you have to, if you're using
No.
the space bar, you have to keep it held down. Okay, Tracy.
Go ahead, Trace.
Trace,
Can you hear me now?
We hear you now.
Okay, very good. Okay. Right. So I know it's a big room, so everything echoes, but Lori, I can hear you fine. Ed, I can hear you fine. Marcia, I couldn't understand anything that you said. So I have no idea what the question was. Other than, I don't know, I guess you're looking for a vote. But I did have a comment on the Jones Engineering responses. Without having things attached to this, I would have no idea what this went to. There's no property address on it. There's no owner's name on it. There's no wetland application name on it. This to me almost means nothing. So in the future, could you please put that on there? Otherwise, this could go for any property. We would have no idea.
okay,
There's too much paper. We have way too much paper, and without it being able to be tracked to what it is, it's hard to tell what it goes to. So that's what I have. That's the comment I had on that. Otherwise, I will turn it over to Marcia, and hopefully I'll be able to hear better.
okay, Marcia, you want to do the vote again? I mean, the motion. We made a motion, Tracy, and we were just looking for a vote on it.
Okay, go
Tracy,
ahead, continue. Go ahead, continue.
can you hear me, Tracy?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Do you want to vote on that?
Motion? Tracy didn't know she was voting on that. I thought when her hand went up, that was a yes. Okay, so, all right, I'm going to entertain a motion again to approve application IW 2309 for proposed new construction for a single family home within a 100-foot upland review area located at 139 Mill Street. Applicant Chia Campos with our general condition. Someone like to make a motion? Okay, Wendy Ann. Seconded by Louise. All those in favor?
Aye.
Tracy, are you gonna vote?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. Oh, okay, and now I will entertain a motion to approve the bond for IW 2309 for proposed new construction for a single-family home in the amount of $22,354.75 in a form to be approved by the borough attorney prior to the commencement of construction activities for the property located at 139 Mill Street, applicant Louise Campo. Yeah, Wendy Ann. And second? Louise Sheedy, all those in favor?
Aye.
Tracy? Okay. Motion carries.
Yes.
Jim, we're all set. Thank you. We'll be in touch with you tomorrow.
Okay, now I'd like to move on to item 5, new business, commission discussion decision regarding application IW 23-10 for proposed fuel pumps, canopy, and additional pavement to be added to site with existing building located at 801 Rubber Avenue, applicant Nadeem Khalid. Do we have the applicant here? The engineer?
Megan,
Oh, yes, please come to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Nadeem Khalid. We are the property owner, 801 Rubber Ave. We have a convenience store, and really we maintain the sales and all that. And quite few customers, they are requesting to have something with a gas add-on. So this is what we are proposing, so canopy with the 2 pumps and the tanks. We met with the city of Hills. We've been through some of the comments, what the needs are, requirements are between public works and the wetland, as well as the zoning department, and we addressed most of the issues, and all the stuff has been provided in the drawings. Our engineer James is online, so he can have a few comments. Any question you have, please feel free.
Okay, so James is James, okay.
Do you mind if I screen share?
Yeah, I'm gonna make you a co-host
Yes, sir.
and then you'll go ahead and screen share.
Okay, there we are. Okay. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James DeMayo. I'm a professional engineer. I'm located at 1 McConney Grove in Derby. So just to give you a quick idea, the existing property, 801 Rubber Ave, it's at the intersection of Newman Street and Rubber Ave. Just zoom out real quick so you can see. We have the Ocean State job lots. Shell gas station is right down the street on Rubber Ave. The existing wetlands are along Long Meadow Pond Brook, just to the south of the property, as well as directly across the street on Newman Street, Webb Brook. So that puts the upland review area approximately right in the middle of the property. The property is also in a flood zone, just so you're aware. What we are proposing to do is add about 470 square feet of parking along this northern edge here, as well as a little bit of pavement in here for a turning radius, or to help with the turning movements of the vehicles. We are proposing a concrete, replacing the existing pavement with some concrete for underneath the gas pumps and the canopy. Aside from that, we are not substantially changing the grades of the site. The site will remain predominantly in the same direction of flow, which is to the northeast here, which currently there is no treatment on site. What is happening is the water's sheet flowing across the existing parking lot, making its way into Newman Street and hitting the catch basin located here. And then that has a direct discharge into Webb Brook. What we are proposing is we will be adding a trench drain along the entrance and exit of Newman Street to help capture everything, as well as a catch basin in the corner. These will go, sorry, I'm on the wrong sheet. These will go into a water quality unit and then into some underground infiltrator units. That'll have then so pretty much all the water will be treated by the time it even hits these units. But then after that, these will also pose some additional treatment. And then after that, it will overflow into the existing catch basin in Newman and then into Webb Brook. Realistically, the only activities, so again, there's really not much in the way of grading, very minor grading just to help direct the water where we want it to go. Aside from that, the pavement will be ripped up and replaced in areas where we're proposing pavement, and then the other locations will be concrete. We will have, there's not a whole lot of place for S&E. However, we are proposing pretty much wherever we're disturbing, especially along the adjoiners, and the silt fence actually comes down. I'm sorry, it's the sheet. Comes down and heads back in just to where we're really disturbing. Aside from that, that's a bulk of the disturbance in the upland review area. I will also add one additional, which is the requirement for sidewalks. So we're going to be installing 5-foot sidewalks along Rubber Avenue, which is also in the upland review area. So that's the quick down and dirty. So if anybody has any questions, more than happy to answer anything for anybody.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions at this time? Brian or Tracy? Do you have any questions? Could you unmute, please?
So show me the direction where you're grading it to send it out again.
So all of the water is going into this catch basin already. It's
Right.
going to that upper right-hand corner.
Okay.
And we're not changing that grading. We're just modifying it slightly to make sure that we capture it into the catch basin. We're trying to capture as much into the catch base as we can, but we're going to miss some, which is why we're installing the trench drain along Newman. It is essentially it. We're trying not to change the grades too much. Also, due to the fact that we're in a floodplain, we really can't add material. So we have to kind of keep it as a net export. So, I mean, technically we're removing 4 cubic yards right now from surface to surface in terms of calculation. There's going to be a little bit more pulled out due to the installation of the tanks and concrete and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. How big are the tanks that you're putting in?
It's gonna be, James, if you allow me, it's gonna be 2 10,000 gallon tanks. One will be a regular, another one will be a super, and that is a split tank.
Are those details on your plan? Is that noted on the plan?
It is not currently noted on the plan. That is something that we can add.
It should be. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And then how big of an area are you going to be excavating? I'm sure it's on here, but I haven't had a chance to look at everything yet. Or can you direct me to which page that would be on?
Yeah, I don't have that specifically on the plans. I will also call that out. It's going to be for the tanks and for the underground, but I will make sure to include that information for you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then I know we've had to deal with some gas stations in the past, but what is the, you know, you're very close to 2 waterways. What's the protocol for spills, things like that?
Sorry, you said spills?
Yeah, if there's an accidental spill of the fuel, which could happen, and it's really close to the water, so.
Yes, ma'am. So, most gas stations have the spill kits for cleaning up any of the fuel that gets spilled on the grounds. One of the other mechanisms that is going to be installed is around these pumps on the concrete pad underneath the canopy. There will be ridges installed so that this way, ideally, it's not going to leave the concrete. So it's going to try to stay contained in order for it to be cleaned up appropriately.
Okay, that's on the plans as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you show us with it?
Can you bring that up on your share it on the screen by chance?
Yes. So my groove detail. Sorry, I'm trying to remember where I put it now. I apologize. I think I put it, where did I put it? So barrier groove detail, which is along this side. So it's essentially just a small groove just on the inside of the edge of the concrete pad that will act as a channel. This way the fuel cannot leave the concrete. It's going to be trapped there in the event of a spill. And that will be around the entire perimeter of the pad.
What page is that on your print?
Yes, sir. So it is on, this is page 4 of the packet, but it's sheet 3. So if you include the cover sheet, it's 4, but it's sheet number 3 on the proposed site layout plan.
How much fuel would be contained in that area?
I have not run that analysis, but I can for you.
Okay, that would be great.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Michelle. Or no, Marcia. What's the drop? A lot of these canopies have the suppression system built into the canopy of it. Do you have that in this?
As the majority of Novatek sites in the construction, they don't provide, but if they require for the entrance systems, we can install it.
So you're saying, who doesn't require it?
A town of Novatek.
The town of Norfolk doesn't require that?
Depend on the fire department, if they ask to have that thing required, it will be installed or have it.
So on other gas stations where we've done approvals, there's been times where there's been no grooves below. But this one's gonna have the groove in it.
Definitely. Groove is just like a safe protocol, so basically if any spill happen, it's like a majority spill is like somebody forgot to shut off the nozzle and this and that.
Right.
Otherwise, the way anytime delivery comes in, they have a monitored any delivery spill, which is notified immediately to the fire department as well as the spill. This particular site, we are having one of the companies substation equipment. And there's another company is going to be monitor all the catch basin, all the system. They come every quarterly basis, normal. And if there's any spill, they will be they can reach to the site for 2 to 3 hours. And site will be shut down.
So we've seen 2 different types of things that for catching the spills. We've seen ones that had no grooves and we've seen the ones that have grooves. What is the major difference other than the grooves? How does the one with no grooves necessarily work?
The basically in case if any spill reach to the exterior of the concrete, those grooves are like about 7-8 different patterns of like a 2.5 inch gap.
Yeah.
So basically they try to fill in to go to the next one, Meantime, that particular system and the tanks and pumps and the canopy have a special system that which can be immediately shut off so that it still don't reach to the surface. And God forbid, if it hits the surface, that all the monitoring, water treatment system, install it 99.9% to control all the spill before anything goes to the creek. And in between that, being our job to immediately notify that the emergency squad to reach and take care before any surface hit.
Now, I know a lot of the tanks, they have a built-in system now to inform anybody if there starts to be a leak.
That's correct. So that is going to be.
And that's something that's usually handled through the building department.
Definitely, that's going to be alarm system built in, so that system immediately shut off the complete pumps, gasoline system, and all the submersible. So there is no way anybody can pump gas. And it will also notify to the main terminal that who's providing gas, or he will, as well as like as stages, notify the local authorities to immediately provide the service, or the people who need to be at the site, they already they notify from them. So there's a system in case of any emergency or any problem happen, those people are notified with no time.
Okay,
As well as there's a lot of safety and safety measures and sensors been installed, the new equipment and all that, that's gonna be part of that installation.
okay, thank you.
But
Are the, emergency protocols listed on the plan as far as, what the owner just spoke about?
We can make sure that they're all on the plans as well. That's not a problem.
Okay. All right, Tracy, did you have any questions?
Yeah, did, Jim reviewed the plans? Does Jim have any questions on it? Or any, recommendations or anything?
Well, Jim Stewart, sorry.
Is it
Well,
turned on?
no. Lori and I did review preliminary plans. They did a lot of revisions. I'm expecting the commission to determine if it's a significant activity or not, and then we'll have a further review for the next meeting.
I have one more question. I have one more question.
No other
Dan,
questions?
there is a catch basin at the corner of Newman Street and Rubber Avenue. In the past, I've seen that quite a bit sunk down. But it looks like it's been built up again and recorrected. Was there work done on it you can remember, or will that be affected with any of this construction?
I would have to take a look at it. I don't know.
I'd like to actually go out and just kind of look at the property, and I know the property, but I know there's going to be changes made to it, so I'd actually like to put my eyes on it and see where the changes are actually taking place. So I know I would like to schedule a site walk for myself. I don't know if anybody else wants to do that. And then once we get the information back as far as, how many gallons of fuel will be contained, and some of the other questions we had, then maybe at the next meeting, we can decide if it's significant or not. I don't know that we have to do that tonight. Okay, and then we can have a little more time to look over the plan. And then let the applicant answer our questions as well before the next meeting. So, okay. That sound good, Brian and Tracy? Nodding. Okay,
Tracy, give us thoughts.
okay, all right. Thank you for your time, appreciate it.
Are we gonna schedule a sidewalk? Or are you gonna go individually? What did you wanna do?
Yeah.
Individual?
We can go individually, I don't know if the applicant is typically around, are you
So
typically
definitely,
available?
we'll be available anytime. We'll set it up, like let Lori know, and we'll be at site.
So you're going individual, so I'll get in touch with you, Nadine, to
And
see.
we'll have some of the documentation what you requested, so we have those contract and agreement with those folks who's going to be monitor the site. So we can present to you as well as we'll submit to the town, so next meeting you have it, all the stuff.
Okay,
No, but I think the point is the commissioners will want to view the property individually, and they want to know if you can have somebody meet them there.
Definitely,
And the staff will coordinate that time and date with you.
absolutely no problem.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, we'll be in touch.
So,
okay,
let us know
we'll continue
anytime, anytime.
the January meeting. I can't remember, I don't know the date, third, January 3rd.
I believe it is.
Thank you.
And
Thank
we'll
you.
be back- The meeting will be back here.
What if these that coding poster to this microphone, you think they'll be able to hear better? They're hearing what I love for picking it up. It's the echo that they're having.
You mean move this over here?
I was just thinking, because that's a wireless mic, you can move them here, and their voice will carry better to the speaker.
I'm gonna move one of those over here.
One of those microphones just have to be turned on and spun around.
How do you keep it on?
I still think a person standing here, this isn't gonna be one.
We used those last time. Then you got the problem there.
Okay, I'd like to go into the public hearing now, at 7:01. We'll continue with, the wetlands, to IW 2308 to be located over multiple parcels on Webb Road and Rubber Avenue. Applicant Apartments at Long Meadow LLC. I don't know who's going for the applicant. I know we have a lot of new information that was given to us today. So we're going to hear from the applicant right now.
Good evening.
Yeah, right here.
My name is Jim Cormier. I'm the applicant, for 2308, the apartments at, Long Meadow Road. As we left the hearing last month, there was a significant amount of information that we needed to provide, alternate plans, some different review and follow-up information that was done by the peer review and our engineering team. There was also a number of matters that were brought up by the interveners, that were some of it was a little bit confusing, and some was a little bit, misleading and misinforming the residents of what was going on. One thing that did come up, which the chairperson made very clear that was irrelevant, was about the appraisal of the property. That has nothing to do with wetlands. But what it did bring up is when I went back and spoke to the prior owner, I discovered that the attorney, Lou Bukecki, who was representing the intervener, conveniently misled everyone by not informing everyone that he had written a prior title policy on this property when he represented the former developer. He didn't represent me, he represented the former developer, and he wrote a $950,000 policy on the property. I have copies for everyone here. As I got further into that, that same developer who he represented had performed a number of tests on the property, boring holes, reviews which have been provided to the borough, and were provided back in 2006 when the prior developer got the approvals for a much larger development than he had misled people and told them it was only certain 5 lots that he represented. That information proved that the property and the tests on the rubber were not hazardous. So he and his advisor came up here and deliberately misled everyone in the neighbors by telling them that we're gonna end up poisoning their wells because they said the property was contaminated. All those tests and all those reports are public record. You all have them. The prior commission, not you individuals here, but the commission approved the prior development, knowing that those reports were valid. 27 people got up here and spoke at the last meeting, and I saw all the other reports and emails that were made public. And it was disappointing because there was a lot of undue anxiety and stress that was created by their deliberate misrepresentation of this information that his prior plan had provided. I have the copies of the title reports here to show that Attorney Lou Bukecki actually did represent this prior developer and conveniently spun the narrative for his convenience. Now, that said, we did listen to what people had to say. And despite bad intent, we significantly changed the plan. We cut the density significantly. I know there's questions about the delineation of the wetlands. My team is going to talk about that to some extent. But we changed our plan significantly to accommodate the confusion of the delineation, which
Again, a lot of this is new information that you've done today, and I do understand this is going to require an extension again. So I'll grant that, I have it in writing now, I'll grant that extension for you. Or, I mean, I'll concede whatever needs to be done for that. But the part that I found very distressing, though, is that, it was deliberately misleading to the residents that this is all contaminated land that is gonna ruin everyone's wells and everything like that. His former client has all those reports. You guys have those reports. At one point, you had asked for the phase one, which I provided to the borough after last meeting.
Do we have a copy of this? I don't understand what reports you're talking about.
The Delta reports from the prior approval.
Oh,
So I did look at the Delta report. I mean, I'll go into that later, so I'll let you
Yeah, no,
finish now.
and we have there was a remediation plan and everything that was approved by the prior, not this commission, but a prior commission back in 2006. And it was based upon those reports that shows that the rubber material was not hazardous. We're not gonna be poisoning wells, anything along those lines. Then there was a subsequent phase one report that was done, which I provided to Lori after the last meeting, which everyone should review. And so that said, I'd like to turn it over to Darren, over to my engineer and my wetlands engineer, Megan Freeman, who's on Zoom here, and let them discuss the material changes that we have made to the plan to accommodate the delineation or the confusion on a delineation where we actually did avoid those areas, and to clean up some of the misinformation that was deliberately fed to the crowd and to this commission. I am going to give you copies of this information for your record, and I'm going to turn it over to Darren.
What are the copies that you're passing out?
This is just to show that he did the title policy, so he represented the former developer,
Oh,
and he is making a point about the MAI appraisal and all that stuff, but it was convenient where he profited from doing the title work and the policy on that information.
yeah, no, this is not
It's not-
relevant to our same as.
No,
it
it's
was not relevant.
It's not relevant to the wetlands, no, it's just to show that he misrepresented to everyone the fact that he had an interest with the prior developer, and he was aware of the fact that the environmental reports were done by his client, not by me.
Okay, well, we'll get into those.
And that was in response to the whole thing about the MAI that he brought up last.
And this is
Last
the environmental report that you're referring to is the
No.
Delta report?
No.
There's another report? Okay.
Madam Vice Chair.
Wait.
Well, I'm just confused as to what environmental reports we're supposed to be.
I think
Looking at.
I think we got them that night or the next day, and I had them here and we put them online. And I don't think I gave you copies, so we have to get these out to them. They're
Okay.
all Delta reports, and I apologize, Jim, we put them right online.
Yeah.
And it got confusing, so I will make copies, I could get these out to them
All right,
tomorrow.
that's fine, but
Because
he
I
did
have all this
provide
training.
the reports back a month ago.
November 2nd is when we post them online.
Okay.
They were,
I need those, don't get those confused with anything else.
Okay, she'll make copies.
all right,
Yeah, everybody will get a copy.
I'm sorry for that confusion, but those reports were provided and they're not new, those were done from 2006. And they were part of the prior approval, from not this commission, but a prior commission on the last proposal.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm gonna let Darren speak.
Personally,
Okay.
Madam Vice Chair,
Oh,
if I may respond to some of the allegations and comments, so that we could have accurate back and forth between the applicant and the intervener and his counsel.
okay, I'd like Attorney Fitzpatrick to address that issue, please.
Okay, so the procedure for the hearing has been established. It's going to be the applicant counsel. The chair at the last meeting indicated that the appraisal information was probably not relevant, or evaluation was not that relevant. Likewise, I suggested to the commission that the valuation provided by, or evaluation criteria provided by this applicant is likely is worth similar weight as to the information provided by the intervener at the last hearing, so I would ask that the commission accord that the same, or similar weight. And I would suggest that the procedure take its ordinary course, that the applicant proceed, and then the intervener may respond. I'd ask counsel if you could just hold on to his comments until the appropriate time. I'd like the proceeding to go in order, so that everyone understands the process and no one feels somebody's being put ahead of the other. This is the ordinary and custom practice of this commission for many decades that I've been around, so with no disrespect to anybody and with respect to all, I'd like the process to continue in this way, so I think, Mr. Horgan, it's falls in your court now.
Much appreciated. The record, Darren Overton, SLR Consulting, and a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. Here on behalf of the applicant to present engineering aspects of this application with me online. Also from SLR is Megan Raymond, and we were both presenters at the last public hearing, and we are continuing to present information tonight. While not ideal, we did submit new information today, which addresses the comments that we received from the two peer reviewers. We've also submitted some revised plans and supporting information to answer those comments, as well as comments from the commission, the public, the intervener, and others. We've made an effort to address all of the concerns that we're aware of to date with that new information. I'll say the process isn't perfect. I would have loved to have those in 2 weeks ago. But I'll tell you, it took us about 2 to 3 months to design this project to begin with. So having a month to address all those comments and consider revisions, it's difficult to get them in on time, but commission does have the new information, and we are fully prepared to present that tonight. And we have some graphics up on the screen that Megan is running the presentation. The graphics that we have here are really just presentation graphics of the information that you already have, but I do have half-scale copies of these presentation plans that I can hand out to the commission in case you want to take notes or look through these on your own, flip back the ones that aren't on the screen. So I do have 10 copies. Lori, how many should I provide for the commission? Recognizing we do need to give one to the intervener.
I have 5 commissioners. I need one for me, Jim, Ned, that's 8, and one for the interveners, 9. And one for BL.
I'll take one if I get one. Yeah.
You want me to stamp them in first? One?
If they're being offered for this record, they should be stamped. At least our version should.
Okay.
So there's 10, I'd be happy to take 2 back. One to BL and one to the intervener.
Here you go, take 2 for them. Subtract, you're never gonna see.
So my plan is to go over the site plan changes and then some of the relevant supporting information submitted to address the peer review comments. In light of the disputed wetlands, which we have now added to the plans, there's a difference of opinion between our wetland scientist and the peer reviewer. We have now represented those disputed wetlands on the plans to be complete disclosure so that the commission has all the information and understands how those are related to the plans. In light of adding those wetlands on the plan, we also have 2 other alternatives to consider tonight, which we'll present. We also did some comparisons to prior plans that this commission has seen. And then Megan Raymond from our office has also done a wetland impact assessment that she will go over regarding the revised plans. So the first plan we have up there is really existing conditions plan, and what's relevant on the plan is the 2 areas of wetlands along Webb Road that are the disputed wetlands. Megan, if you could point to those.
They're shown in orange on the plan. They're in kind of the central portion of the site. They were shown on the Kleinfelder report that I believe goes back to 2006 application. Our original wetland delineation did refer to the Kleinfelder report and did note that we disagreed with these areas as being defined as wetlands. So we were completely open with this from the beginning. But now those were not shown on the plans because of our delineation, but since there's been a second opinion, we have now shown those on the plan. So that's how they're represented on the existing conditions plan. Then if you flip to the next plan. So as part of that, we have updated, this is our wetland impact sheet that's towards the back of the set. So we have gone ahead and updated that to show, based on the current plan that this had been presented to this commission before, what those wetland impacts would be associated with those disputed wetlands. The direct wetland impact is highlighted there in the blue. The upland review area, which becomes extensive, associated with those wetlands, because they're kind of parallel to each other and not much more than 200 feet apart. We have tabulated also those 100-foot upland review area impacts in the table, so that the commission has a complete understanding of what was presented previously. You have the prior plans that show the wetland impacts related to what we believe were the wetlands delineation, and now you have a complete view of those disputed wetlands and how those impact what was proposed previously. So in this updated wetland impact plan that we show, what's important to know is that basically the building development for those 3 buildings in that central area, which are buildings 3 through 5, with those disputed wetlands, it'd be another 9,120 square feet of direct wetland impact, which is represented on that table there. And there's also, of course, that yellow outline, increased upland review area disturbance that would be associated should we move forward with this plan.
Is that page 1 of 1, W1 on your?
W1, yes.
Okay, got it. Go ahead. Thank you.
So that's all unrelated to the plan. We just wanted to add those on there, completely disclose the impacts associated with those according to the prior plan, so that there's information in the record for the commission to consider. As part of the other revisions that we made to the plans, we added more detail to the demolition and removal plans in the site walk. There we identified there were areas of trash and other debris that was deposited on the site. We added some notes to that demolition plan that those areas are to be cleaned up as part of the demolition. It's also included in the added construction sequence. I'll get into that later. We also made some revisions to the buildings that are on the plan, revised plan. Building 1, we eliminated one side, half of the first floor in that building. So we were able to step the grade up another 8 feet in back to lessen the excavation behind the building and reduce the height of the retaining walls. So there were some units lost in building 1 on the revised plans. We also downsized building 2. I think this came up in the BL review that there was basically some discrepancies in the deeds and information for the property boundary on the western side. Our prior plans had shown actual parking and retaining wall development within that area of discrepancy. I believe the applicant has reached out to the property owner to try and resolve that issue, but there's been no discussion on it. So we downsized building 2. We moved all proposed improvements off of that disputed property area. So we're not proposing any improvements there. So we believe that issue is fully addressed and no longer an issue related to this application.
You're talking about the 2 buildings that are lightly shaded in the bottom there, right? That's what you're talking about?
Building 2 is left-hand side, the one that Megan's pointing to now.
Oh, 2, okay. Thank you. I can't see I don't see them numbered on
They're
the
not
plan.
numbered on that.
They're not numbered on that plan.
The next
Next
plan.
one, okay. See it. See it. Thank you.
We also prepared a phasing plan. Megan, if you go to the next sheet. So part of the BL review talked about potential phasing of the project. Initially, we had submitted this as 1 phase. We recognized that that was a good recommendation, and that phasing of this project would be beneficial, particularly in limiting the amount of disturbed area at one time. The Southwest Conservation District in their review letter also referencing the deep stormwater general permit and the desire to limit the amount of disturbed area at one time in order to better control sediment and erosion control during construction.
So we've gone ahead and taken that recommendation and prepared a phasing plan. So what you see in front of you is basically 3 phases of development, according to this phasing plan. And we start on the right or east side of the plan in red, which would be phase 1. So there's 3 buildings and a clubhouse associated with that. The phasing actually works out very well in 3 phases here. And part of the reason why we started on this east side with these 3 buildings, even though the way we number the buildings, these are, I think, 7, 8, 9 of the buildings. We have, you see off to the right along the roadways where we plan to extend the water main to serve the site. So absent water to serve the buildings, we wouldn't really have a phase. So it completely makes sense to start with the first phase here and what we've done. You also see in the middle of the plan, I think that's building 5 at the bottom. You see some overlap between what is phase 2 in blue and phase 1 in red. Once you start building this out and then you get to the point of finishing up all 3 of the buildings there and the clubhouse, there's no room to have staging area. So we're proposing as part of phase 1 to actually go into a portion of phase 2, clear it and create a staging area for the contractor. At that time, there is a wetland crossing that's necessary. It could either be a temporary log crossing, or they could choose to install the permanent culvert that's been designed. And this is all part of the phasing narrative that's been submitted associated with this. And I'll go through just the first phase. I'll read through that so we understand how the phasing works. So then we have the second phase, which is buildings 3, 4, and 5. It's outlined in blue. The staging area would be that overflow parking lot on the northwest corner of the site. There would also have to be a wetland crossing to be able to access that as the staging area. Since that is a higher flow tributary stream, we don't believe a temporary crossing would be prudent, so it would be most likely that the box culvert would be installed and utilized as a construction access. Also the benefit in this phasing, in the first phase, you can take construction access of the main entrance road. In phase 2, you could take construction access from our secondary access to Webb Road. So you don't have construction traffic driving through your completed first phase to build the second phase. Then when we move on to phase 3 in green, that staging area, which is only used for overflow parking in phase 2, could also be used for phase 3 to build the remaining apartment building and the townhouses that are located in phase 3. And you could still use the construction you could use in that overflow parking area, temporary construction access there. We didn't propose a formal roadway there because the sightlines are less desirable, but for construction access, it could be used. Also, until the bridge is built over the stream channel as proposed, Long Meadow Pond Brook, access could be taken off of Rubber Ave for construction access to build the townhomes as well. So the phasing actually works out fairly well. The water main would follow the phases and loop out to Rubber Ave. So I won't spend much time on this. We did submit a multiple page detailed construction sequence. It includes some general notes that mention the fact that the contractor applicant is going to have to apply for a construction stormwater general permit with DEEP. It also recommends that a pre-construction meeting be held with town staff, the contractor, et cetera, before work begins on the site. There's some notes that tie the work back to the sediment and erosion controls being compliant with the 2002 manual as well as town standards. It notes about keeping the site clean.
What about the new stormwater manual draft? Was there any compliance with that as well? Is the draft close to being approved? Where are they on that?
So we did provide a comment response that we are following the 2002 soil erosion control manual and also the 2004 water quality manual. The other manuals, there's a grace period. They don't go into effect until March of next year, and then there's a grace period of a full year from their issuance.
For compliance?
I think, yes, the purpose of that is for applications like ours that are currently pending. We wouldn't be forced to redesign the whole project to the new standard while it's pending in front of a commission like this. So we believe that we're well within that grace period, which gets triggered at preliminary design. We've already submitted full design to this commission. So we are going to stick with the design following the current manuals.
Okay, thank you.
It also talks about the contractor minimizing the amount of exposed soil at any one time. temporarily stabilizing areas and making an effort to minimize exposed soil to 5 acres or less. It doesn't say the contractor has to, but there should be an effort to limit that, and it could also limit the amount of buildings that, you know, could be under construction at one time. So then we have a sequence. It starts with staking out the limit of disturbance, begin the clearing operations with limitations, install a construction entrance and all the erosion controls, construct drainage swales and diversion berms, complete the erosion controls and the sediment traps, conduct all the demolition of any existing structures or other existing improvements that are designated to be removed. All trash and other surface debris should also be removed at this time and disposed of in an appropriate offsite facility. That's an effort for the contractor to go out there and find all the trash in the phase as the clearing is being done, because if we walk the site, a lot of it is hidden in the brush and the weeds out there. When they start clearing the site, they can clear all of that debris out before they start earth moving activities on the site, get all that demolition completed out of the way. Then it just goes into the standard stripping the topsoil, constructing the stormwater basins, utilities, the mass earthwork. And then once rough grade is reached, establishing permanent vegetation, completing the utility installation, and notes erosion controls need to stay in place until the site is fully stabilized. The last item in each phase notes about a temporary condition of a hammerhead cul-de-sac at the end of that, so that residents in the completed phase have the ability to turn around at the end of what's essentially an incomplete road. And then that would be extended in the next phase. When that's complete, the road would be extended until it goes all the way out to cover out. So I believe we have, as Gail suggested, put together a detailed, not only phasing plan, but multi-page narrative that covers all the details that are unique to the site and what's proposed for the development. If anyone has any questions to what we're presenting on the commission, happy to take them at any time, or I will just keep going and try to move through this as quickly as I can.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, you had mentioned a log to a permanent structure over the wetlands between buildings 5 and 6 in phase 1. What's the determining factor? Has it been determined yet if you're going to use a log bridge, or how is that being decided?
It could be either. The erosion control manual allows for temporary log crossings. I think for the most part, a lot of that is put in there for forestry work, where logs are put down. That first crossing there's a very small watershed. It's really just on site. There's no real stream channel that leads into it, so it's very low flow. So I think it would be appropriate as a temporary condition, or if this commission feels that they want to see the full pipe crossing constructed, that's fine too. It could be done either way.
Thank you.
So just a quick summary. I'm not going to go through all of the details of the comment response letters. All of that is in writing. And I would offer, because it's difficult to articulate all of our thoughts on paper in these comment response letters without making them overly burdensome to review, I would offer that we would be willing to meet with both of the peer reviewers in order to go over our response letters in more detail and make an effort to try and tailor and streamline any remaining revisions that we need to make and try and get them in advance of what I expect is going to be continued public hearing in January. So we did have a swale detail for a comment regarding how the drainage is being handled above the retaining walls. We added further detail on the underground detention regarding geotextile fabrics and liners. We also updated the watershed maps to show the TC flow paths and all the segments. To address another comment, we also clarified some of the information that was shown on the watershed maps to make them more clearly understandable. We updated ENS control plan notes to address some of the Southwest Conservation District comments. We added fire hydrants to the plans. We also we had omitted an electric and communications line. So we have gone ahead and show that on the plans as well. There was also a comment related to the basically the certification or the background on the survey that was completed for the project that we were showing on our existing conditions plan. We have now submitted signed and sealed copies of the boundary survey and the topographic survey with all the notes and appropriate information that shows the accuracy of the survey that was used for the design. And that completes, kind of an overview of the significant changes that we made. Happy to address any questions that you may have as they come up. If not, I will move into what we considered as two other alternatives, recognizing that we have these additional wetlands, based on the BL review. So Megan, you want to switch to alternative 3? So again, we have the disputed wetlands here that are in yellow. And we have our delineation in blue. So the current plan that's been submitted to the commission had 3 buildings in this area, 3, 4, and 5. Recognizing the extent of the wetland impacts in our newly submitted wetland impact plan, we considered some alternatives here. We went down to 2 buildings where we have one up close to Webb Road and one also down closer to where the building 5 had been shown before. Actually, at this point, I have 10 copies of kind of the summary of these 2 alternatives. I'd actually like to submit these now for the record, so you can follow with some of the numbers on this as well.
Gave one to the interviewer,
So, yes,
and you gave one to them.
any of these.
So alternate 3 has the 2 apartment buildings in lieu of 3, replacing buildings 3 through 5 from the original plan. The buildings step on the slope and Webb Road with parking and access drives in between. The upper building along Webb Road will have 60 units with 37 parking spaces below. The lower building will have 52 units with 33 parking spaces below, so a significant reduction in the unit count in this area. The direct wetlands shown are related to the 2 wetland crossings, along with the impact of the lower narrow sections of the disputed wetland areas for the building and parking instruction. Some of the impacts, along with the proposed units and parking counts, are as follows. So for the apartments, there are 365 apartments now shown, which is a reduction of 102 units. Townhome units are unchanged at 8, so there's a total of 373 units in this alternate. Total parking provided is 613, and that's in a combination of garage and surface spaces. The wetland impacts, direct permanent impacts, 3,880 square feet. Direct temporary impacts, 1,700 square feet. And the 100-foot regulated view area impacts 103,670. So a significant reduction from what is shown on the original design plan. I'd like to move on to alternate 4. I have a summary for that as well. This considers 2 buildings up near Webb Road. This alternative seeks to avoid the eastern portion of the yellow disputed wetland area and completely fills in the western one with one of the buildings. And in this scenario, the 2 buildings are up against Webb Road, the parking steps down the slope, and then the access drive is at the lower portion of this offset from the wetlands. So in this scenario, the direct wetland impacts are related to the 2 wetland crossings still for the roadways, along with impact to the eastern disputed wetland area for building and parking construction. The eastern wetland disputed area is not directly impacted in this layout, and the summary of the wetland impacts are as follows. In this, the apartment units are reduced to 353, which is a reduction of 114. Townhome units stay the same. Total units is 361. Total parking is 624. The impacts with this, even though we have less units, are greater than alternative 3. Direct permanent wetland impact is 5,035. Direct temporary impact is 1,700. And the 100-foot regulated area impact is 125,020, which is again more than alternative 3. So we believe alternative 3 is the best option as far as feasible and prudent development of the upland area review area associated with this. Megan, is there anything that you want to add in regard to these two alternatives before I move on to the next part?
Thank you, Darren. Good evening. For the record, my name is Megan Raymond. I'm a professional wetland scientist and registered soil scientist, a certified floodplain manager with SLR. I think as Darren's describing these changes, what I'd like to allow you to know is that I'm here obviously to answer any questions about wetland functionality, wetland impacts, etc. And there'll be a time where I'll get into some of those impacts and mitigation following the conclusion of Darren's presentation. But one of the things I think you can tell from Darren's initial presentation as we move through the evening is that we've spent a lot of time looking at this site and looking at the purpose of the project and looking at the wetlands to try to develop a plan that balances the wetland functionality with the community need of the project. And so what we're seeing here is these two alternatives. And though we do have some direct wetland impact here, these areas, these disputed areas, and we can get into the previous delineation, these are areas that we do not see significant contribution or really any contribution in wetland functionality. One of the purposes one of the components rather of our impact assessment was the inclusion of functional assessments for each of the wetland types. So recall we have Long Meadow Pond Brook in the base of the site in the valley and a number of different tributaries leading to that along the periphery. But these areas, we acknowledged them. We knew that they were there to begin with. We did not flag them because particularly the eastern area did not have requisite soils. The western area was primarily stormwater fed from our opinion. And we didn't feel it matched the definitions of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Act. In an effort to concede through the third party reviewer, we did add these to the plans and assume some impacts. But we're not looking at a loss of functionality. And as well, with all of these direct incursions within the wetland boundary, these areas will be mitigated with 2-to-1 creation on the south side of the stream corridor. So that's my summary for now, and let Darren continue. But again, I'm here online to answer any questions throughout, and I'll be happy to chime in through the process. Thanks so much.
Hi, you knew I had a question, right? Just regarding these alternatives, do you have the calculations as far as how much impervious surface is in the wetlands and in the 100-foot upland review area?
I do not.
Okay. Can we have those, or for next time, or please? Thank you.
Absolutely. That would be impervious area in the wetlands and the upland review.
Yeah, I'd like to just have an understanding of how much of this site would be covered with impervious surface.
Is that just for the alternatives or for the design plan as well?
I guess everything would be great. Yeah.
So for all options.
Right.
Matt, acting chair, I suppose, or I'm not sure who's speaking. Sorry, I can't see that specifically. Oh, sorry, Ms. DeBarber, I see that you're online there as well. The overall impervious within the regulated areas of the site is about half of the work in the upland review. But we'll discern those numbers more specifically for you next time or within a memo to the staff. Thank you.
Yeah. And did you have any alternatives? I guess I'm just looking to see if you had anything not affecting the 100-foot area. Did you guys consider that at all?
We did not. Would you like to see one?
Okay. Yeah.
Is that a yes?
Yeah.
So you would like to see the development potential of the site with no upland review of service?
That's something that I'm interested in. Yeah.
So the next item I'd like to move on to is one other alternate, not one that we submitted, but was submitted by the intervener at the last hearing. So at the last hearing, there was a prior plan of a 5-lot subdivision that was submitted, which is this plan sheet here. We've taken, and as part of the presentation of that, and I think there's a letter that's been submitted today arguing that this is the most feasible and prudent alternative due to minimization of wetland impacts. I'd like to argue that it's not. The plan that was submitted, was not presented as having any wetland impacts until it was questioned, where it was noted that the prior application had 75 square feet of direct wetland impact. I still don't know where that impact is, but we overlaid this with our wetland delineation line. And as part of the prior presentation by the engineer, there's a lot of discussion about how important the upland review area is, that 100-foot upland review area and the impacts associated with it, yet nothing was presented regarding those impacts for this alternative. So what we've done is we've actually overlaid them and highlighted them in yellow using the same colors that we've used on our impact analysis for the various alternatives that we've submitted. And what you'll see on here is there's the 5 house lots that are proposed. There was noted as 75 square feet of wetland disturbance previously. With our wetland delineation, that area in red is actually 675 square feet of wetland disturbance. If you want to compare apples for apples to the wetland delineation on our plans versus this one. Also, the 100-foot upland review area, disturbance area that was not presented at the last hearing is 64,740 square feet as we've estimated it. So that's the areas in yellow that are represented there. So you can see even a single family subdivision of property is going to have wetland impacts and certainly regulated area impacts. So I just wanted to make sure and disclose that for an apples for apples comparison, what we're presenting as part of our proposed project and this other alternate that was submitted. So as you can see, there's a significant amount of regulated area for only getting the 5 house lots there. Now, of course, this doesn't represent the full development area of what our project is proposed. So we have land that extends over to Webb Road. I would also argue that single family lots, as we're alluded to, is developing along the frontage of the road is not feasible to improve along Webb Road. If anybody's been out there, you see how steeply Webb Road drops off from into the site. It'd be very difficult to design driveways down to single family houses right along the frontage on the roadway. Also, along Webb Road, it's pretty windy. There's limited areas where there's suitable site distance for roadways or driveways. The proposed roadways that we are showing carefully evaluated the most appropriate sight lines, and we've evaluated those as part of the project, which we'll review when we get the planning and zoning. So in my professional opinion, I believe that designing for just frontage lots is not a feasible or prudent alternative, and there's certainly going to be regulated area impacts that this commission would have to review associated with that for a number of different reasons. It's not feasible or prudent sightlines, developability of the site, and the fact that there are going to be regulated impacts regardless of what is proposed here. And I would say that the only way to develop the property over fronting on Webb Road would be to bring an internal roadway system in at locations with the proper sightlines and then subdivide the lots off of that internal roadway, which will likely require similar wetland impacts to what we've shown for the crossings, which are also very similar to the 2006 plan that this commission approved. So for those reasons, I believe this is not a feasible alternative.
So is this one of the alternatives that you're submitting, or is this just that you're comparing yours to the interveners that he submitted?
We did not submit this alternative. It was submitted by the interveners. I simply took their plan and overlaid it and highlighted where the actual regulated area impacts are associated with that development.
Okay, thank you.
So then, the last thing I would like to do is we put together a comparison of that 2006 plan. Now that plan included those lots that were fronting on Brother Ave and also included duplex units. This plan is not easy to read. I'll apologize for that right away, but the copy of the 2006 plan that we have is not very clear. It's not high resolution. So what we sought to do is put color on it again to highlight the impacts and the comparisons. So what you'll see here is the areas highlighted in orange are areas where that 2006 plan had impacts closer to the wetlands than what we were proposing. In contrast, the blue areas are areas where our proposed plan has some disturbance within the upland review area that is closer to the wetlands than were proposed in the 2006 plan. So you can see as you look at that, in my eyes, I see that the orange areas are slightly larger than the blue areas. but roughly a fairly close balance. What's interesting is too, that a lot of the areas, we've sought to pull away, granted, this is our wetland line that we're using, again, to compare, so you compare the plans accurately. The green areas are areas where the development area overlaps within the 100-foot regulated area. Then we have a situation where the two lots in the middle, where you see the purple area, that front on Webb Road, those two lots form our own, seen on plans that are formerly owned by Line Weber, were not part of that 2006 application. So we've taken within those lot areas and highlighted the impacts, upland review area impact associated with those lots, just to kind of break it out to provide a more clear comparison to what was proposed then to what is proposed now. So what we're showing here is that in general, the impacts that we are proposing for the apartments, regardless of the count of the number of units or number of buildings we have, whatever alternate you're considering. And this one shows the impacts for the plan that is designed, that has the 467 apartments, that has the 3 buildings in the center. We didn't analyze it for the alternatives, but the alternatives would obviously have less impact in that area. So the point was to compare a plan that was previously approved by the commission, granted it was a number of years ago, and compare it with the impacts associated with a little bit different use, still residential, but the apartments that are being proposed as part of our project. So inevitably, like we have presented and what was presented on the 2006 plans, there's a need to impact wetlands to provide access to the upland developable areas of this parcel. So you're gonna have roadway crossings, you're gonna have direct impacts. The question is, what gives you the most economic or socioeconomic benefit for those impacts? And we believe our plan with alternative 3 provides a type of housing that adds diversity to this community, provides a type of housing that more people that live in a higher percentage of people that live in this community can afford than single family development or even the duplex type of development that was proposed here. So that duplex plan with the 5 single family units had 44 duplex units and 5 single family lots for what is essentially a similar amount of direct wetland and regulated area impact is what's proposed in the current application, which proposes a range from, depending on the alternatives, 353 to 467 dwelling units. That was a lot of information on there.
No, thank you.
We have provided PDF copies of this, so the commission can grab copies of those, zoom in and blow them up, and I know it's hard to review it now, but we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have associated with this.
Tracy mentioned that she doesn't know what you were just talking about, because it wasn't on Zoom. Tracy, can you see the map that's up on the Zoom? Can you unmute and
I don't
tell?
see any map on Zoom. I have nothing. I don't know what you're talking about, what's blue, what's orange, because nothing is displaying. I just see everybody's, I see people, but I don't see, a map or anything. So if somebody's sharing it, I'm not seeing it.
Okay.
I'm gonna interject. This is Megan Raymond and I'm sharing my screen from Zoom as well. Does the audience see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
I do.
Does Brian see it?
I do.
Okay.
So,
All right,
Tracy, hey Tracy, maybe try changing your
Maybe it's
view
me.
from speaker to gallery or back and forth and see if that fixes it. Otherwise, you might have
Yeah,
to jump out of the meeting and rejoin.
yeah, no doubt. I will try.
Thank you for all the information. Do you have any idea how many parking spaces were allotted in that 2006 plan? No.
I guess the appropriate number would be 2 per unit, because they probably have a garage and driveways.
Okay.
The last thing, Megan, if you just flip to the next slide, is a rendering of the proposed apartment buildings. I know, and this is information not necessarily relevant to the wetlands application, but there were questions raised, and there were also questions about the height of the building. Part of this is related to wetlands, and that I think there was a question brought up by one of the commission members about potential shading of the buildings to wetlands. we did take a look at that and we talked to the architects. So these are the buildings that we would be proposing. You can see they're basically 4 stories high with a gable type roof line. The way the buildings are oriented on the site plan, you know, the wetlands are to the south and the stream corridors to the south. So with the sun rising in the east and moving across the southern part of the site, the shadowing of the buildings would really be mostly towards Webb Road and not towards the wetlands themselves. So we didn't do a detailed shading analysis, but we don't believe that the buildings themselves are going to provide, because of the way they're set back and the limited height of them and the orientation of the way they're located on the site, that they won't have any present any significant shading issues related to the wetlands on the site. So the last thing is, if there aren't any questions for me, I'll have Megan present her information regarding the wetland impact assessment.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Megan Raymond, professional wetland scientist with SLR. Let me just get my figures straight here. Sorry, I'm switching presentations. Okay, sorry to close your eyes for a second. Sure. So thank you again for the opportunity to present on this project and this site this evening. We did receive a number of comments, both from the public as well as the commission and the 2 review letters, and did prepare a comprehensive report that was submitted this evening that you'll have some time to digest over the next few weeks. But within that report, we have a number of graphics and tables that really begin to illustrate or paint a broader picture of the potential impacts on the project to the existing wetlands on the property. In addition, what we did do, there was some discussion about upland communities on the site and asking for some additional information about those characteristics. And this is just an example of one of the graphics that's in the report. We prepared an overall ecological community map for the overall site that includes the emergent wetlands within the Long Meadow Pond Brook corridor, which occupies the base of the valley, the forested wetland that surround the Long Meadow Pond Brook emergent wetlands, the disturbed scrub shrub corridors that carry stormwater and surface water from Webb Road down to the perennial stream corridor, as well as the successional areas, particularly in the eastern portion of the site. There's a successional woodland that's kind of replacing the previous agriculture. Also within the wetland impact assessment is a series of historical photographs that I think are pretty just to get a better understanding of the texture of the property. The site, as you all know from living in town, has been active in the agricultural space since the earliest photos that we have go back to 1934. So there's been agricultural use on the property, a lot of different disturbances with utilities. The site is traversed with 2 sewer lines. There's a gas line in the eastern portion of the site. And all of this activity has reworked and worked over the upland. So we have a mix of predominantly non-native vegetation within the upland areas and portions of the wetland, but one area of forest, of oak hickory forest in the western portion of the site. One of the things that I do want to clarify from some of the testimony at the last hearing, what we did testify or describe within this is that we have a high value, high function and value riparian corridor down at the base of the site, the Long Meadow Pond Brook. This is a high value wetland that we've certainly taken consideration and prioritization in designing the plan. Though this area is high value, it is not I would not characterize it as a sensitive resource. This is an area that testimony kind of came to into that lens at the last hearing. And something can be high value without being particularly sensitive. And the reason that I say it's not sensitive is because of the degree of working and reworking of the upland that has allowed still the high value and high function resource to remain within the stream corridor. And the fact that this area is a high functioning and high value resource pertains to the fact that it has very strong hydrology with a perennial stream. And it's bordered by emergent wetlands that are not going to be touched. All the wetland impacts that we've discussed are up on the periphery of the site. There is one the crossing, but it's a complete span, and there's no direct wetland disturbance for the crossing along Long Meadow Pond Brook. So that's a component of, again, the wetland resource assessment, impact assessment is the ecological community map. As well, we get the soil map. The other thing that I think we should probably spend just a minute on, and I know that we've talked about this a number of times, is just this wetland delineation. We did delineate the wetlands on the site in August, and knowing that the site had been delineated back in 2006, and we had that delineation available to us. And again, we looked at these areas, these finger-like projections that occupy. This is about this area, this western kind of trough is 0.07 acre. And this area here is, I believe it's 0.22 acres. So in total, about 2.29 acres for the areas in total. Overall, the wetlands on the site that SLR delineated in 2003, in August 2003, were 14.88 wetlands. 14.88 acres. The previous 2006 delineation was was around 13 acres. So we did add about 1.8 acres of wetlands to the delineation without adding these finger-like projections back in. So now that we have under I guess direction from the reviewer to add these areas back in. There's now 15 acres of wetland on the site, just over 15 acres of wetlands on the site. That has a concurrent upland review area of 12 acres. So 27 acres of the 34.6 acres of this property are encumbered with wetland or upland review. That's about 78%. So there's really there are really no alternatives that are available that would avoid work within these, particularly within the upland review area. And again, as Darren mentioned, the majority of our work within wetlands pertain to crossings that allow for access to viable upland area. And again, the delineation report, as well as the impact assessment, describes the classification of the wetlands, the different cover types, and the functionalities. And there's complete functions and values worksheets in an appendix that you can peruse, and perhaps ask me questions at the next hearing if you do. And again, we summarize that at the last meeting. This is just another graphic here that depicts, we see here, this is the previous wetland line in darker green. And then we have our new, the SLR 2003 wetland, and that's broader than that resource. So again, we're adding overall adding in these disputed areas, we have about 2 acres more of wetland on the property than was flagged in 2006. Graphically, what we're depicting again is just the limit of disturbance, and this is of the old plan, the plan that's currently under proposal, not our preferred alternative 3. But this darker brown color just reflects the permitted limit of disturbance. And then we have our work area that extends in the light pink. I'm just going to slip to the next, to the alternative 3 graphic, and just present the overall findings of our wetland impact assessment report to this preferred alternative. So what we see on this plan here, and again, what we've maintained is the previous limit of disturbance approval, which is outlined in brown, and then we have our proposed work that's in the light gray on this particular drawing. And when we look at impacts to wetlands as wetland scientists, we begin the process by evaluating the direct wetland impacts, the areas where we have work within the wetland boundary. And then we move to indirect wetland impacts at wetland activities within the upland review area that may affect the overall function based on potential changes in hydrology or potential modifications to the systems with perturbations during construction with sedimentation or erosion. On this particular site, what we've described is we have unavoidable wetland impacts, and our wetland impacts are specific to crossings of watercourses to get access to upland areas of the site. Again, the geometry and the layout of this property with the steep slopes and the roadway geometry that surrounds the site, we needed to define access points at safe locations. And that is what largely dictated the layout that we see now. So we have direct wetland impacts that are unavoidable from our opinion, particularly for access. When we look again at indirect impacts, what we have designed to mitigate those incursions is, again, a prioritization of maintenance of the stream corridor. In general, we have a minimum of a 50-foot offset to the high value Long Meadow Pond Brook in order to maintain and maximize that wetland resource. As well, we have designed a very robust stormwater management program that provides for water quality components, as well as management of peak flow attenuation, or provides peak flow attenuation and manages increases in the rate of delivery of stormwater to the wetland. Again, we are going to have an increase in pervious surface on the site, so we do need to provide a robust stormwater management program. Finally, indirect impacts will be managed with the sedimentation and erosion control that Darren described. That has a 3-phase component in order to minimize the area that we're opening up on the property, as well as throughout the site, and make sure that areas are closed and stabilized before moving on to the next phase. Because we do have wetland impacts, and we're certainly working within the upland review area, we have proposed an area of wetland mitigation. It's actually not shown on this graphic, but we have an area of wetland creation, which is down in this location of the site. It's about 10,000 square feet, so about double 2-to-1 creation, 2-to-1 wetland creation. And what we'll do in this area is excavate down to the wetland boundary elevation, and then plant with a variety of hydrophytic vegetation to achieve a 75% or greater cover of wetland in that area over a 5-year monitoring period. Additionally, all along the limit of disturbance, because we do have a lot of non-native shrubs in this area, or just overall on the site, we're going to propose a row of native buffer plantings that will provide just additional screening and buffering to the wetland resource between the limit of disturbance and the proposed activity. And finally, we'd like to contemplate the establishment of a conservation easement over the Long Meadow Pond Brook corridor in order to maintain its conservation value and protect that area in the long term. And given all these in total, what we see as scientists is a site that, though we do have direct wetland impacts, and we are certainly working within the upland review, we have a site that's been managed and engineered accordingly and mitigated in order to provide a value to increase the housing diversity and provide a valuable community asset in light of the protected resources on the property. There's a lot, I'm sure, to get through tonight, so I'll close here, or I'll pause here, and we can answer questions, or we can, and I'm happy very much for your consideration and listening to my presentation.
Thank you for your time, much appreciated, a lot of information, much appreciated for your attention, that basically concludes our presentation, so happy to turn it back over to the commission.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any questions at this time? Tracy or Brian, do you have any questions at this time?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jim Stewart has a question?
I don't,
Or,
yeah, a couple, if you don't mind. Brian, a couple quick questions. You don't have to respond to them now, but I just figured I'd say.
can you use your mic, Jim, please?
Sorry. As far as your phasing plan, I'm concerned that if you don't have a through road, the fire department might have an issue with it because of the density of the development. So if you don't mind contacting the fire marshal and just confirming that you could build that first phase without two entrances. The second comment is, are you actually proposing now to modify your plan to alternative 3?
So I guess I'll start with the first question since I'm up here. We certainly could consider an emergency access through road should emergency services want that, and include that as part of the phasing. Basically we'd be boxing out the roadbed of the proposed road in order to provide that. So we can reach out to the fire marshal on that. Not for your second question, sorry.
The second one was, are you actually proposing to modify your plans to alternative 3?
Right, so that's a good question. I don't necessarily have an answer to. We have presented alternatives. We have presented a design. And the commission has the ability to, move forward with a decision on this, either approving the design, they could approve one of the alternatives, or they could actually modify anything that's been submitted and approve with conditions. If alternative 3, we believe is most feasible, improved alternative, that would be what we are recommending at this time for approval. And should you want more detailed information provided for that, we can provide it. So just
Okay,
tell me if you want it and we'll do it.
then the next one would be, if alternative 4, 250-unit apartment buildings is feasible and prudent, why not alternative 3 with 250-foot, 50 apartment units?
There you
And
go.
and then the question is could you locate the modification of the two, so you can keep the road along the wetlands and keep both wetlands or more of both wetlands? Maybe we'll have to sit down and I'll sketch up what I'm talking
So
about.
it's interesting, yeah, in 3, even though there's more units, there's less impact.
Yeah.
Could we downsize units more in buildings to have less impact? Absolutely, yes.
And then the last question is, how did you determine your total number of spaces needed? Parking spaces?
Parking spaces needed, we looked at ITE and other relevant, similar complexes for apartment buildings, also based on 30 years of experience in designing these sorts of things and working with our traffic engineers. We believe, look, the ITE, I think, has a minimum ratio of about 1.2, 1.3 for parking. We believe with, having some additional parking, a 1.55 ratio is what we're shooting for. So I believe those alternatives achieve that.
So how many single bedroom and 2-bedroom units do you have? I'm just saying that, I don't want you to do it now, but if you could just look at those requirements, because it seems like it's significantly more than what other people were proposing. I mean, it's true, there's other units are closer to the train station. But if you could just take a look at that. Because obviously, if you have more single bedrooms, you might not need, 1.5, 1.6 parking spaces per unit.
I know I presented a breakdown at the last hearing.
137 and 30.
Found it. Yeah, so the one bedroom units were 433. 2-bedroom units were 34. And then we've had the 8 townhomes. That adds up to the 467 apartments plus the townhomes was.
Fair.
Yeah.
I don't, not looking at it, I just seems that maybe a lot of parking for 400, you're giving more than one spot for 1-bedroom apartment, and I don't know whether that's necessary or not.
Yeah, no, you're right. We don't want to design more parking than is needed. We also, the opposite, you don't want to have a situation where people are parking in areas that aren't designated for parking. And it's a constant struggle to understand exactly what the appropriate parking number is. And of course, the Wetlands Commission wants to limit the amount of impervious surface and have it down to the minimum amount of parking. Planning and Zoning Office wants to provide some flexibility with some extra spaces. There's a balance there. We're trying to strike that balance. So any input you have, we're happy to accommodate it.
Thank you. So I guess now we can hear from the intervener.
Yes, please.
Please.
Thank you. Madam
Thank you.
Vice Chairman. Yes, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to respond to Mr. Cormier's comments, Mr. Overton, and possibly the soil scientist for the applicant. I'm not sure which order that I'm going to present. I'm going to get a little organized with my materials, then allow me to start.
going to switch the order of how I'd like to respond to some of the comments, because there was this most recent analysis of alternatives, which for the first time, the applicant has been presented through Mr. Overton and his staff, only because we forced the issue and the commission seemed to agree that, listen, you have one proposal. What proposals have you considered that A, as legally required, to possibly avoid all wetlands impact in regulated areas? Or if that's just not feasible, what alternatives have you considered that will minimize the intrusions on wetlands and regulated areas? So at least they're coming forward in a proper manner, being more comprehensive about this application. But I will say that to present these concepts without detailed plans and just guesstimates of their impact is inadequate from an application standpoint. The borough's regulations make it very, very clear what the requirements are to have a complete application. These are schematics and general discussions of what this project could look like. So I would encourage the commission, if there's an honest effort to consider less impactful proposals for development, detailed submissions accompany whatever those alternatives are. So that's one comment I do want to make. So I appreciate the Ms. Raymond's soil scientist expert background, and also Mr. Overton with his professional engineering credentials. But neither of them are qualified to opine on the legal requirements, and those are the statutes that are enacted under the Wetlands and Watercourses Act. And this commission and the Borough of Naugatuck has adopted promulgated regulations that are consistent with the act, and the many changes to the act that occurred since its initial adoption in 1972. When the wetlands legislation was passed in 1972, it was because of a very prominent public interest. We must preserve watercourses, wetlands, and natural resources. And it's such a priority to everyone, the rich, the poor, the middle income people, because if we don't preserve those natural resources and clean drinking water, then affordable housing and other legitimate alternatives and public interest topics are largely irrelevant. So let's not lose sight that regardless of how redeeming some aspects of this proposal might be, it could provide some affordable housing. That is a legitimate public interest, but it pales by comparison to the adoption of very rigorous wetland statutes that we had in Connecticut. So one of the big changes that was made in the legislative history of the wetlands law were changes that were adopted in 1996. And I have the legislative history in summary highlighted that shall provide to the commission momentarily and to the applicant. They basically wanted, the recognition was that the wetlands laws that were passed in 72, there wasn't enough specific delineation in the statutes of how far can a commission go to regulate the areas around wetlands. Because it was common knowledge that activities immediately adjacent to wetlands, and sometimes pretty far away, could have an adverse impact on the wetlands. So the initial 50-foot buffer that was part of the 72 legislation was mostly increased by judicial decisions. The very famous manner of development adopted by the Supreme Court in the late 1980s confirmed that a commission can regulate
up to 200 feet away from wetlands, depending on the conditions. So the Connecticut legislature adopting the notion that maybe we could help the courts and developers and commissions by actually changing the statute to say you do have the right clearly to regulate those buffer areas. So, and also they wanted to make it very, very clear to everyone by statute, instead of relying on court decisions, means can meet the feasible and prudent alternative test. So what I'd like to do at this point is to hand you the legislative summary with certain areas that are going to go over that were highlighted. And let's discuss the legal requirements, not the applicant's desire or the professional engineer's opinion that this doesn't disturb that much. Let's look at the legal requirements very, very clearly. And with that, just, pardon me.
We have them over here because they stand before you.
Oh, okay, sure. I have a copy for everyone here,
Thanks.
and I guess you could circulate them. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't label it, Jim, sorry.
So this 3 pages, mostly 2 with a small continuation, a 3rd page, is the official summary of the enhancement of the wetlands laws that were adopted in 1996. I've highlighted some very relevant bullet points about what happened here. The very top of the 1st page, I read, the law prohibits an agency from issuing a permit on an application that has had public hearing unless there is no feasible and prudent alternative to the proposed activity. I think we all know that. So let's read down further in this legislative summary. Feasible and prudent alternatives. The law requires the wetlands agency to examine the alternatives to a proposed action. The act requires that the alternatives be feasible and prudent and cause less or no environmental impact to wetlands and watercourses. So if this commission is going to be presented with 3, 4, 5 alternatives to the initial proposal, it is supposed to select the least impactful way to develop the property if it's impossible not to disturb regulated areas or wetlands. Not what's the second best or the 3rd best, the best, the least impactful. That's what the law requires. And Mr. Overton, no disrespect intended. I know you're an advocate for Mr. Cormier, but that's what the law requires, and you are not qualified to opine on what the legal requirements are. And consistent with that, because we were given a number of additions and subtractions to the plans just today, I also composed my legal opinion that clearly, right now, what's been presented does not meet the no feasible prudent alternative test. And we have submitted a previously approved frontage lot subdivision that was the least impactful that we've seen so far. We did not bring in those other set of plans that apparently may have been approved for some townhouses. That is not what is part of the record prior to today. I guess they're suggesting that we adopt it. We do not adopt it. We believe a frontage lot, no infrastructure improvement type of development meets and is required currently no feasible and prudent alternative test. So I'm gonna also turn to page 3. And you see the label says buffer zones. Before I read what it says that's highlighted, again, this is the legislation that says, let's not rely on the courts to confirm that a commission can go beyond the 50 feet, they can go 100 feet, they can go up to 200 feet if it's appropriate. So let's make it clear legislatively. So commissions, applicants, engineers, soil scientists, limnologists, attorneys can understand this is not codified, it's the law. Let's read it. The act expands an inland wetlands agency's authority to regulate activities in wetland buffer areas to include watercourse buffer areas too. It is legitimate, it's required to consider those buffer areas. Right after that legislation was passed, the Connecticut then called Department of Environmental Protection through the Attorney General's office, produced guidelines for commissions and applicants to follow when they are proposing developments that are in upland areas. So as that submission is being made, part of the public hearing record, and a copy has been given to Mr. Cormier and his team, I'll just read it out loud. It's a Connecticut then DEP publication. Guidelines, upland review area regulations, Connecticut inland wetlands and watercourses Act. June 1997, right after the legitimization of regulating buffer areas became the law by statute. And I'm not going to bore anyone with the content in here. They expect the applicant's team, and the commissions will give very careful consideration to the upland areas. This part is I try to gather some information. So I can feel for Mr. Cormier, this is not easy to present in sometimes hostile environments, and Mr. Cormier chose to selectively take some pot shots on documents that he claims confirm that I must not know what I'm doing. I was somehow disingenuous with what I presented. Of course, most of what I presented came from court proceedings. But anyways, I'll review that briefly. So Mr. Cormier apparently looked at the title search when he purchased a property. Well, I'm not sure where he got his information, but he found a title insurance policy. Anybody in this room who has a mortgage on a home that they own, and they have what was explained at the closing is that the bank requires a title search to make sure you are the rightful owners. They want to make sure the title's clean.
And they require a title policy to make sure there really are not any problems with the title. And the only attorneys who are allowed to issue those policies to a bank are attorneys who are approved by both the title company and by the bank that you're borrowing money from, that approves you to be an attorney that's suitable to give that policy. So sometimes when people refinance their homes or small commercial properties, and they say, geez, you know, Liberty Bank or IM Bank, they have the best rates have come down. And I'd like to refinance to take advantage of a lower rate. Oh, wow, IM's got the best rate. I'd like to, you get a loan approved, a refinance, just get no new money, just get a better interest rate mortgage to take out the old one that was higher. And so ION or any other bank, especially on a small commercial project, will say, geez, that's a little bit more complicated a loan. So therefore, we're only going to allow you to have an attorney to issue the policy that's approved on our list. Has nothing to do with the development, has nothing to do with wetlands. It's a title policy. So Mr. Cormier, this is merely a title policy. I never represented this company before any commissions or any purpose. They did a refinance. They saw I was on the approved list, and they chose to use my office to do a closing. End of story. So nothing really devious about that. Mr. Cormier was making a big deal that somehow the appraisal that I submitted to you, somehow that low value suggested that there was something suspicious about it. I'm misleading you somehow. No. If you paid careful attention to what I was talking about, let's go over it a little bit more. Sometimes repetition is the mother of knowledge.
I just wanted to interrupt you for 1 minute. Are you going to talk about, what you talked about last time with regard to the
I was
appraisal?
just gonna highlight, honestly, Madam Vice Chair, if you would bear with me 5 minutes, I'll make my points and be finished.
If you could, yeah, if you could do it very quickly, because I know we still have, I see you have some other people here and we have public comments still, plus commissioners' comments to make. So I know we talked about this last time, so like, quick summary.
So Mr. Cormier and the views at Long Meadow Brook LLC, which was Mr. Cormier's LLC, they owned the property previously in that name. They were in a foreclosure because they were not paying all their obligations. And at the end of the foreclosure proceeding, the court requires an expert to provide valuation testimony. Now, the property was several parcels, total 35. It's a complicated situation. It has some development potential. So the court is only going to allow a true expert with vast knowledge of appropriate valuation of that type of property. So the bank selected an appraiser, an MAI, and I went over what the qualifications of an MAI are. And that appraisal was done in the foreclosure. And I'm going to highlight some of the things that were mentioned. Well, the appraiser in testifying in court, and Mr. Cormier nor his counsel, Attorney George Zeppos, ever questioned the credentials of the bank's appraiser. And the bank's appraiser is expected, because this is a developable type of property, to evaluate it in its best light, the highest and best use. And I give you a definition of what that was. So it says, and it's addressed to the court, unrefuted by Mr. Cormier or his counsel, you have to consider the future development of the land. And this MAI appraiser said, it's probably just going to be single family lots. And I'm going to read, it says, and the property is extremely wooded, extremely steep, it has sloping topography and extensive wetlands. The future development of these lots will be difficult, if at all possible, due to these facts. And Mr. Cormier did not dispute the testimony nor the written appraisal, unrefuted. And that appraisal was done in March of 2023. And under penalties of perjury, not only did the appraiser testify, but the oath of appraiser, under penalties of perjury, submitted to Superior Court. So forget about what the value is. This very knowledgeable MAI class appraiser is saying this is one extremely difficult parcel to develop. It's beautiful, it's vast, all these parcels together are about 35 acres, but you're probably not gonna get a lot out of this. Okay, from a development standpoint.
Perfect. Thank you.
And last point, Madam Vice Chair. As the property was nearing the end of the foreclosure and the ownership by Mr. Cormier and his LLC, that was about to end, Mr. Cormier wanted to buy some more time, so he opted to have his LLC that was in the foreclosure filed for bankruptcy protection in 2023. Okay. I work in the federal court arena for 30+ years. They take integrity and truthfulness very, very seriously there. And Mr. Cormier, what I gave you was the actual bankruptcy filing that took place on behalf of the LLC. Mr. Cormier, in multiple places, I swear everything I've submitted is true and correct,
Okay,
including the appraisal
okay.
under the penalty of perjury.
Okay, can we move on now, with that? Please. I just want to get to the issues that pertain to the wetlands,
Right, so
so,
when Mr. Cormier suggests that an evaluation of the property by an MAI appraisal, it's not wetlands per se, but the fact that there are wetlands leads this appraiser to opine development will be difficult. That's what this stands for. Okay, so there is clearly a connection. If this were perfectly dry, high and dry land, the opinion and evaluation would be different. That's the only point. And Mr. Cormier adopted it in his bankruptcy of his LLC. So if someone is accusing me of disingenuous, I suggest that you look yourself in the mirror and re-examine what you signed under oath.
okay, does the intervener have anyone else that would like to call up to the podium at this time? Okay, at this time, I would like to entertain, public comment. If there's anyone from the public here, do we have a sign up sheet?
It's right there on the table.
Okay. If you could sign your name on the sheet so we can go in the order, in which you sign up, please. And if you all could keep your comments to around 3 minutes, that would be great. And if you agree with someone else, feel free to come up and state your name and that you agree with what's been said. We want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity. And we're going to take comments from everyone who's in person first, and then we'll move on to comments from those who are on Zoom.
Samuel Land, 220 Wentworth. I submitted a video. I would like to ask the chair, the soil scientist said significant but not sensitive. It seems very confusing to me. Like, if you could get some kind of definition from that, I don't understand.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, this is a property, this video was taken around 2004.
I had to dig this out of an old hard drive and
You want me to share the screen?
Yeah.
get it downloaded. It shows
Hold on,
a
we're trying to
significant
share
storm.
the screen. Hold on. We're trying to share the screen so the people on Zoom can see it also. Tracy, can you see this?
This is what this looks like with a significant rainfall. It really does become a lake. There's a lot of water moving through here. It pretty much is 100% of the delineated wetlands area is underwater.
Can you describe, where that is exactly? Is it,
That is the delineated wetland area in that application.
along, Web Road?
Yes, this is my backyard this year.
Okay.
This year. An alligator in there.
Yes. This happens 3 or 4 times a year in my backyard. Now, I specifically want to talk about building number 8 in this proposal, which is, I think, about 75 feet from my house. When they talk about the shadow of the building, I'm in the shadow of the building. It looks to me like on the plan, that building is on 10 feet of fill, which is going to cause slope towards my property, which potentially could make this worse. I also do not understand how all of this other water coming off all of the pavement, and it's going to come down, it all comes down to the base of the property on the easternmost side, where it's only 20 feet wide it's going to go through, and the velocity increases significantly.
So this is your backyard,
This is the bottom part of my property.
part. So near building 8. I'm just trying to get a sense on the map where
Yeah.
this is.
Building 8 would be to the right of this. So what you're looking at in the distance is the edge of Long Meadow Brook.
Excuse me one second. Those of us online are not seeing the video. We're only seeing the folder with the files. You may have the wrong screen shared.
The gazebo is in your backyard.
It is.
Okay, I'm sorry, just trying to understand the extent of
Can you
this.
see it now, Brian?
No. Seeing the files move. Yeah, that okay. That just went away, but I'm not seeing the actual video.
It looks to me like that water line that you're taking in that video is getting close to the 100-year
Go
floodline.
back and then you got to.
And that's happening all the time.
Thanks.
Can you see it now, Brian?
Yeah, you can.
Yes.
Now, all of the current that you see is in only maybe like a 15-foot wide area. There was a road all the way down from Webb Road, all the way to Rubber Avenue Extension at some point. And the remnants of that road are blocking some of the flow. So, and everything gets pushed down to that pinch point on the end of the property. So now the engineers on the original proposal were putting all of the stormwater into the wetlands in various places in the original proposal. And then the reviewer wanted them to put it at the easternmost point. That was their recommendation. Well, that corner is the easternmost point. So now, is that going to make this even worse? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sabine Grave. I live at 1060 Weber Avenue. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sabine Grave, living at 1060 Rubber Avenue. Quick, going aside from my prepared comments, the 1.6 spaces, I know parking was of interest earlier. Now it requires 2. They're currently showing 1.6 per unit. Normally you would require at least one guest space per unit. Inevitably, that would lead to larger parking areas, larger development areas, larger impacts, just to know. So if I go on to what I actually initially gave you some documents about 2 weeks ago. And I just wanted to reiterate for the public, the applicant, and all those here in the room today, the information that I sent to you. As you already know, the portion of Long Meadow Brook affected by this development is defined as a Class A recharge aquifer and one of only 12 meandering meadow environments in Connecticut, making it a very valuable asset to the town of Naugatuck. As Megan clearly stated, geometry makes it impossible to avoid wetland impacts, making it a very poor site for this type of dense development. I also need to reiterate the importance of a general movement nationwide to increase flood protection in an era of increased storm events and flooding by protecting wetlands and meandering streams, which act as a break for rushing stormwater and a sponge for reabsorption of those stormwaters. In other words, any situation where water velocity can be reduced and concentrated runoff spread out spread out across a larger area protects areas downstream from flooding. That being said, many have observed that Long Meadow Brook already has issues downstream where flood damage is sustained during intense storm events. This development is only adding to that problem in wetlands loss and significant amounts of added stormwater runoff and velocity from impermeable surfaces and steep slopes, which have not really been addressed here today. The grading issues, the boundaries of the grading were not clear to be seen on those plans. Approving this plan will have negative consequences. As one of the few remaining natural flood protection areas, it is advisable that it inevitably be considered for a conservation easement rather than be further depleted. And this is opinion, of course, amplified by urban appropriate dense development. On another note, please bear in mind that established wetland plant root mass in conjunction with the bacteria supported in that mass aids in the breakdown of of a variety of toxins. Wetlands also contain nitrogen-fixing plant material, further providing a source of protection for the aquifers and Long Meadow Brook waters itself. Construction will inevitably remove portions of those mature plant communities, and wetland reestablishment would be necessary, bearing in mind that that reestablishment takes time and consistent maintenance. The site has had very limited soil testing, 6 spots at very shallow depths, so the true nature of existing conditions is actually yet to be discovered in an area with historic pesticide and fertilizer use and other questionable agricultural applications such as tire mulching, a known source of copper toxicity. All of these factors suggest that the nature and scale of this development will have far too many detrimental effects on our community. Maiming a resource as valuable as that floodplain will have no positive impact. Pockets will be lined at the town's expense. Please use your best judgment and decline this project. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Corrigo, 1058 River Avenue. I made this something similar comment last time, but I think you really need to pay attention to it. You don't talk about it very much. It's in the wetlands, but it's much more important than the wetlands to the town and everything that goes on. Long Meadow Brook runs through that section all the way down River Avenue and underneath the massive building the town is in the process of selling to somebody. And then it empties into the Northern River. That's the only thing that slows down the water at all. There used to be dams, they're gone. There used to be other routes that kept the water from flowing straight down. We had a small problem a couple of years ago that thing turned into a lake like it always does. And then the big, pipe they had down by the plaza, plugged up with all the trees and everything else that came down and washed that out. And it goes down further and it washes everything out. If you look at across from the apartments down the street, or up the street actually, 933, I believe it is. There's a ravine. That's where the brook runs through. That didn't happen all by itself. It was from the water over the years, washing everything away, including the dams that were there. And some of them were taken down by the town. But anything you can do to slow down the water, that floodplain is the only area you can do anything. I'm talking about the town. To slow down the water velocity so it doesn't do so much damage every time you get a heavy rain. And I think we know what happens when you get a real heavy rain, like the flood. The whole town just about washed away. Don't give it away and dump it and say it's not important. It's more important than the wetlands itself. Because it does something for the community.
Hello, I'm Sean Stanton. I live at 255 Webb Road. I've lived there for 34 years. And first I'd like to say, I have not been misled. It's easy to tell all of us, we don't know what we're talking about, we don't know anything. I live directly across the street from what you're going to do. I know this isn't a zoning meeting, but you did bring up cars. You want 600 more cars driving down your road? Just because if you put in 10 houses, there might be a little curvy road and some driveways? You've even said Webb Road is curvy and whatever, it's narrow. So first of all, I know that's not really wetlands, but I just want to say, since he got to bring up cars and parking spaces, I get to bring it up. Also, I do believe you need 1.5 parking spaces for any type of affordable housing. And I think you need over 3 acres of asphalt alone, just for parking. So you were talking about impermeable? That's a lot of impermeable. And going towards the future, gasoline leaks, oil leaks from 600 cars, and it's gonna rain like flood or whatever. Where do you think that's all going to go? It's gonna run into the brook. It's just gonna roll off, gonna contaminate everything. This is a massively invasive project. I can't even believe it's happening. I mean, I have to look at it and it's so emotional to think you're just going to rip up this area. Oh, save the planet, go green, you know, here we are, let's just tear it all up. Let's kill the wildlife, you know, what the heck, we're gonna make money. And like she said, it's an aquifer, it's important. Water is important. You can say I don't know what I'm talking about. I have a well, I depend on water. You can dig it up. Maybe that Uniroyal rubber won't totally affect it, but all of the construction, the digging, we have to put this in. Oh, that's temporary. No, it's permanent. Well, what is it? It's gonna be too late. That's what it is. And I'm begging you, please say no, please. I'm begging you. Thank you.
Hi, Dave Rogers, 100 Hill Road. Just a couple of points that I wanted to address that were made by the applicant and his team. That 2006 approval of wetlands, they did not deem it a significant impact. They didn't have a public hearing. We didn't get the chance to speak to that commission. I don't know who was on that commission, but they didn't deem it significant, but then they approved it. So, you know, for me, that's just a waste of time, bringing that up. The other thing is, right after that, we fought for years to change this all to R30, so this wouldn't happen. So that nobody would come and propose 467 units. We fought years for that. You know, this plan was so lacking from the beginning that the adjustments that have been made are massive, which led to it being submitted the day of. It's scary to me how lacking that first application was. And as far as alternatives go, you know, I think their alternatives are all about making money. They're not about wetlands.
Yeah.
And the amount of impervious surfaces is incredible that you brought up, Marcia. It would just, and Sam's backyard would be up to his house. And I just also wanted to say that I keep hearing the word unavoidable impact to the wetlands. Again, he's just making money. It's not, we don't have to impact wetlands at all. We can leave it the way it is. I just found it outrageous that it was so submitted today. And he's proposing a project that could ruin all of our wells. And he consistently submits documents at the last minute. And it's a waste of all of our time to keep coming here every time. And quite frankly, it seems like he's taking advantage of our community, or trying to. It seems like the type of person that would cut corners on the project at every opportunity. And this seems like the type of person that would walk away from a remediation project halfway through it and leave the borough of Naugatuck holding the bag and the financial responsibility of completing the remediation.
Sylvester Jando, 171 Grand Ridge Road. Tomorrow will be 18 years to the date that Roger Spinelli, owner of Long Meadow Brook LLC, was notified by Delta Environmental Services Incorporated of the analytical test results found on the Webbrook property. In this letter, there were one of 8 semi-volatile organic compounds, or SVOCs, that exceeded the Connecticut Remediation Standard regulations, in addition to some heavy metals and petroleum hydrocarbons. The letter stated that 7,375 square feet with about 820 cubic yards of industrial fill was found. This amounts to 43 full-size dump truck loads of material. Since we don't know how far and wide the contamination extends, 43 truckloads may only be the tip of the iceberg. Only the soil was tested at various test pits. The near surface groundwater that make up these wetlands and the supply with aquifer below were not tested. The main SVOC in question was diambutyl phthalate. This SVOC is on California Proposition 65, listed as a possible cause for birth defects and reproductive harm. 210 ppm of this chemical, or parts per million, of this chemical was detected in the soil. The EPA recommends not to exceed 20 parts per million in water. Another big hitter was N-nitrosodiophenylamine, a chemical used in the vulcanization process of rubber, for example, tires. We know this land is loaded with shards of tire rubber. The chemical has demonstrated urinary bladder cancer in animal models. EPA recommends are not to exceed 6 parts per billion in drinking water. Diethylphthalate is used to make plastics and elastomers for synthetic rubbers, more flexible. Tires, for example, in tires, since they're mostly synthetic rubber. Phenytoin was detected where the World Health Organization recommends levels to not exceed 10 parts per trillion in drinking water. Phenyl, 2-chloronaphthene, chlorophene, and pyrene were all found. These same chemicals were detected at Parcel C downtown, and the main factory site at the former Uniworld site on Elm Street. The EPA states that phenyl must not exceed 1 part per billion in water. In fact, N-nitrosodiophenylamine is in the groundwater at the Elm Street site. Valley knows what else can be found at the Webb and Rubber Road property. Are there PAHs, which are polycitric aromatic hydrocarbons, or even PCBs, like up at the Laurel Park landfill, that were also found downtown. Without further testing, we may never know. For 18 years, nothing was done by the landowners or the borough to remediate the site and make an attempt to protect the wetlands and all the important source of drinking water for hundreds of borough residents and surrounding communities. This project must not go forward until the state EPA and federal EPA get involved with a detailed study of the site, the extent of the contamination on site and surrounding wells, and come up with a remediation plan and execute that plan with proper oversight and governance. With each passing year, these dangerous materials will continue to decay and release their toxic components into the soil, the water table, and the aquifer. Something must be done now and not another 18 years from now. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioner. My name is Edward Bossie. I live on Guntown Road. I work in the chemical analysis field. And I can guarantee you that use of hydrocarbons introduced into the environment are absolutely affecting the quality of our life. In my industry, we use spectrometries, we use gas chromatography. These are cutting edge analysis equipment. And it's irrefutable that damaging unburnt hydrocarbons are being spewed from vehicles. We cannot stop them, and to introduce 600-700 cars to a sensitive wetland area, day in, day out, morning traffic, evening traffic, weekend traffic is crazy. We'd be cutting our own throats. You can't allow this. You can't allow it.
Want to add something? My name is Mr. Corey, I'm 75 over at close. Okay. I live, well, obviously I just said that, I'm a little nervous. And, it's not just the wells, this and that, but the gentleman was talking about the river. I live literally on the other side of the river with him. And the river is usually basically, you can see the rocks, you know, it's nice. They got the bridge, then you got the next area where the dam goes out, where it was talking about. You have another dam behind Tucky's, then there's another dam on the other side, and you have the bridge on River Avenue. By 7-Eleven, where that guy wants to put that, whatever he said. And that bridge, literally the water already, as it's flowing, when it's bad storm, and it's backing off or whatever, that what he showed you, he didn't show you the other side of the pipeline where there's, they didn't say nothing about the pipeline, which the water comes down, right where my property is. My property's like this, and the water goes down in that corner, it goes up the pipeline, it has nowhere to go. And it goes back down around my property area, and it goes down the river behind my garage, and it goes under that bridge and River Avenue Extension. Now, that bridge is generally 12-15 feet, maybe a little higher, on the highest side. Maybe a little higher. And I seen that water go up about 8 or 9 feet from the top of that bridge, which could take it down, and it's really scary sometimes going out there. Look, I was ready to move my cars out of the garage, because I figured it's gonna suck my land up a couple times. But besides that, it goes down River Avenue by 7-Eleven, the old 7-Eleven, Loggy Stop, and it goes under that bridge, it slams into that bridge. Literally slams into that bridge in River Avenue. And then it went down around the other side, the little stream on the other side of the river, behind the car wash somebody else was talking about. There's a river on that side also. It comes down and meets all together, and it goes down behind Webster, in front of Webster Bank, River Avenue, McDonald's. Blew the whole parking lot by the drive-through out of it, blew that out, all behind that gas station across River Avenue, blew all that out. It went down from the river farther, and all that stuff had to go somewhere. Started blowing that stuff out down here by the old recycling center, all that area. Took all that stuff down through there. Eventually, I don't know where I ended up, probably in North Dakota.
Make a long story short, may I show a picture here? I just wanna say, we all live like in one. We all live in one family, nice new houses, communities, quiet, this and that. They literally wanna put this. Where do you see this besides in New York City? This is just the building he showed, I just wanna know before maybe I'm wrong. Was this not the building he showed in that picture a while ago?
Yes.
We really want to see this, in a nice little community, in the wetlands, 500 parks, 600 park spots.
Marcia.
So everybody really want to see this? Tell me the truth.
No.
This is just one.
Thank you.
I'm not done yet.
Yeah, we
Time's up.
gave you 3 minutes. You can come back next month.
Can I just say one more thing? One more minute? What do I want to say? Is this okay? I don't want to speak out of place.
1 minute. I'll give you 1 minute.
Turn the clicker on. And we don't want to see this. I don't think, it's not just the general everything, we just don't want to see this too. This is terrible. We took a nice little community area, all single family mostly single one family houses, and we're gonna turn it into this. Seriously. There's gonna be 8 of them. I never heard how tall they're gonna be or how wide they're gonna be. You see how many floors in this? 10 foot of floor, 40, 50 feet. I'm done.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay.
Just leave it there.
Put that foot out, bro. Welcome to Dog Talk.
Yay! All retirees.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Jeffrey Joy, 255 Web Road. I brought with me an article that I saw in the Citizen News on November the 30th. It's by the Housatonic Valley Association, a non-profit started in 1942. And I think, I'm not going to read the whole thing, obviously I'm going to give it to you if you haven't seen it. This basically is spelling out the increased flooding because of the change in the weather patterns we're having. As the lady with the Megan pointed out, the wetlands area has been increasing. Why is it increasing, you may ask? Because the weather patterns are changing and there's more flooding. More flooding brings more problems, as you just heard from the river. In fact, I was at the Tux Tavern the other day, and I couldn't believe the torrent of water flooding down the bow. I was amazed. What we're seeing here is what Sam showed in his backyard. I've seen that many times over the 35 years I've been there. This is a wetlands area, and it's not going to change, it's just going to get worse. And with all the construction they're talking about and the damaging, taking the trees away, which hold the soil, Webb Road does have a big drop off. If there is going to be an alternative, it has to be something on a single family homes, which is the area we live in. So I'm totally against this project. I'd like to see a hand raising in this area. Anybody other than the construction people and the developer is for this project. Can somebody put a hand up and for this project? My point is made. Thank you very much.
We'll make copies. Yeah, that would. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Fran McDonald. I grew up on Rubber Avenue, 1241 Rubber Avenue. I'm against this project. It's going to destroy the wetlands. It's going to destroy our neighborhood. It's going to destroy our town. We don't need this. Thank you.
My name is Mike Rosa, 67 Birch Lane. I really don't care what happened 20 years ago, what was approved, what wasn't. 20 years ago, lead pipe was okay for drinking water. 20 years ago, the Norfolk River was contaminated. I'm looking at the future. My children's future, my grandchildren. And their future is clean drinking water, not contaminated water. Mr. Cormier is going to chip away at wetlands. I'm telling you, we can't afford to lose 1 square foot for wetlands. Because in 50 years from now, people look back and if we approve this, they're gonna say, what was on their mind? They had the nuts. I am against this project. Thank you very much.
My name is Chris Herb. I live on 149 Evelyn Drive in Naugatuck. I did not come planning on speaking tonight since I didn't understand exactly what would be proposed compared to what we saw last time you met. I want to preface my comments that their expert, the applicant's expert, started her comments by saying that 70% of the wetlands will be disturbed. So just keep that in the backdrop of your mind, that that was their argument as to why this project should move forward. First, it's disappointing and disingenuous to present these new plans at the last second. This has tainted the process by not allowing the public to properly prepare our comments. My friends and neighbors, unfortunately, can only respond at a last minute, which is unfair. In the applicant's review of the wetlands, they included their interpretation of the community need. In all due respect, as a former elected Burgess in town, that is the community's decision, not an out-of-towner so-called expert. As described in the revised proposal, I heard that this was an apples to apples comparison, but they conveniently did not compare the impact that the impervious surfaces created by the parking would have on the wetlands compared to the handful of driveways in the 2004 application. This is not close to apples comparison. It should be rejected just on that comparison alone by the applicant. The parking as presented is significantly undersized and will contribute to a significant runoff impacting the wetlands. My family, if we're representative of Naugatuck, we have 4 people who live here. My wife, who is a teacher here in town, myself, my 2 boys, who are college students living at home. We have 4 cars. So I would say that you could make the argument that the parking necessary for 500-ish units would be 2,000 spots. So if you think about the runoff caused by 2,000 cars parking and driving up and down these streets, I think that that needs to be considered also. If the commission moves forward with any of the applicant's proposals, I recommend that you approve the gas station that you heard in the first one, because we're going to need more fuel in town to make sure all me and my family remain unconvinced that this project will protect our well, and we oppose this project and urge you to reject it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Dean. I live 5 Westover Drive. My driveway is actually on Webb Road, so buildings 3 and 4 of this proposed project will be directly across the street from my house. If I understood the new maps correctly, I thought that buildings 3 and 4 are actually going to be on wetlands, which should not be allowed. And we all know that the land that's going to be affected by this thing is going to affect the brook. It's going to affect the aquifer. There's no way it's not going to. We all know that's true. Please reject the application.
Go to Zoom.
I want to speak.
Oh, I think there's somebody coming up. Can you hold on 1 second, please? Thank you. You're next.
Did they all sign in motion, do you know?
Excuse me?
I'm just wondering if they all signed in, just so we have their spelling.
I don't know that anybody's keeping track. So I'm on there, but I don't know where. Yeah, if you
no,
did it, you would like everybody to put their name down for the record.
Yeah,
If you haven't yet, that would be great. My name is Christina Gordon. I live at 1131 River Avenue. Firstly,
I'm adversely opposed to this project. Describing this development as intense and environmentally irresponsible is an understatement. While I appreciate that the applicant's design team are employing engineering best practices to mitigate disturbance, I argue that this is parallel to an arsonist setting fire to a structure and then using the best fire extinguisher available to quell the flames. The extensive impervious area in all of the planned alternates has yet to be calculated. We have talked and several public comments about the number of parking spaces. I am not privy to the exact process in Naugatuck, but if they pass conservation and go to zoning, and zoning then says you have inadequate parking, they do not acquire variances for reduced parking, do they have to come back? Do they have to start over? What is the process?
Modify.
Briefly, I've reviewed some of their responses to the peer review comments. One of them I find most alarming is number 15 to the BL report. They claim that there's nothing, they claim that they are not changing how the water drains within the wetlands in response item 15. I would argue that that's impossible due to the extensive impervious area being added. I also question the architectural rendering that was flashed on the screen. There's a lot of undulation to the facade, which is not represented in the footprints on any of the site plans. So as far as I can assess, those two things are not truly aligned. So it implies site changes, parking lot changes, that the two designs are not fully cooked. One other thing I want to bring to the commission's attention, again, in the BL review and comments, is that they responded that baseline water analysis was not warranted because this is a residential use due to the contamination on site and the inadequate knowledge to the extent of contamination. I would argue that that's negligent at best of a response. For the record, I have tested my well at this point, and I'm creating a benchmark for my property, predating this proposal should it go forward, and I'm happy to put that on record. Thank you, and again, please deny this. Thank you.
Name's Jim Woodfield. I live at 6 Webb Road. I've been there 46 years. Before that, my father owned my property. Before that, my grandparents. I'm 72 years old, and I've been on Webb Road for 72 years. I've seen a lot of changes going on. This property where this is going to be built, I was 10 years old. I would ride my bicycle up there, go down the path. Mr. Selinardi would let us swim, but whenever there was heavy rain, he wouldn't even let us on his property. And I also own 12 Webb Road. And over the years, I spent thousands of dollars to have a new well put in for my house and thousands of dollars put in for 12 Webb Road. And this guy's guaranteeing that our wells aren't going to be polluted. But I bet you where he lives, he don't have to worry about wells. 700 cars going up and down my road besides about 300 or 400 more. Does he have that going by his house? And then the 3 previous meetings. Oh, by the way, retired professionals are gonna live here. If anybody here believes that, I got an island on Naugatuck River that I want to develop for professional retirees. He's friggin' crazy. I'm sorry, what? No gain for Naugatuck.
Would anybody else like to speak from the public? Okay, now we need to move on to any public comments on Zoom. Ed Carter, do you have some people lined up yet?
Doesn't appear to be.
All right, anyone on Zoom would like to make a comment on this application?
Okay, nope, nobody on Zoom. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to move on to the commissioners, Brian or Tracy. Do either one of you have any questions for the applicant, the engineers?
Not at this time.
I know we have a lot of information we got tonight, but I don't know if anybody came with questions prepared. Tracy? We can't hear you. Are you saying no? No, okay. All right.
No,
Leanne?
not now.
No, Louise, okay. I have a few things, mostly. Just bear with me a minute. I had a paper here. Sure. At the last meeting, I haven't had a chance to look at all of the engineers' comments yet that were handed out tonight, so I apologize if some of my concerns are addressed in those, but regarding the Delta report, I'm still a little confused. This report is from 2006. And what I have on the Delta report says that the scope was limited to the area, I think it was south of the greenhouses. And in the Southwest report, this Kingsmark report from 2007, it recommends looking at the rest of the site. So I'm still asking for that to happen. You know, I know that the Delta report looks at a certain area on the site, but it doesn't address the entire site that was addressed in the Kingsmark report from 2007. So you can see one was done in 2006, and then in 2007, more information was asked for, and I'm still looking to get that information. And then and also at the last meeting, I did ask if anybody had gone out there and looked to see if there were any vernal pools. Was there any site analysis done regarding that?
Hello, Ms. Commissioner. I'm happy to answer that. It's Megan Raymond, the soil scientist, wetland scientist for the applicant. Or do you, again, I don't, if you'd like to continue with your questions, you can hold and we can jump in when you're done. Either way. Sorry to miss your tempo. Okay.
Yeah, my notes are very, I have a lot of notes here, so I'd rather.
Okay, great. Yes, during the course of so that we evaluated the site over a couple of different occasions, and we did flag the wetlands in August, but none of the morphologies of the property lead to vernal pool breeding. The sites, the riparian corridor and the perennial stream doesn't have any vernal pools within it, and the remainder of the wetlands, as the steep drainage corridors, do not have any areas for amphibian wetland obligate breeding habitat. No vernal pools on the site.
Okay, thank you. And then I know at the last meeting, I know you guys changed some of the wetlands boundaries. At the last meeting, I had asked about the wetlands that apparently was on the western side of the site near Mr. Rogers' property. Is that one that you addressed as well? Is in this go round? I don't know if that's for Megan.
I'm actually not, I can pull up a map if that might help. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. We did modify the wetland boundaries on the property based on to maintain consistency with the 2006 delineation, those portions of the site. And obviously we enlarged the wetlands along the stream corridor. But is there an area that you can point, or that you'd like me to point to, that you were interested in, and we can answer the question?
Somewhere over there, I wouldn't know exactly. I just know that one of the residents last time was talking about an area that didn't seem to be marked clearly, and I don't.
Yeah, it could be this. These are. I mean, this these are the areas that we added. So this is in the western, this is in the northwestern portion of the site, this area and this area.
Okay. Okay, so you did it. Thank you.
Madam Vice Chair, while we have the soil scientist, may I ask a follow-up question while we're on the topic of wetlands? And again, I'm here on behalf of the intervener and should be allowed.
Do you have a follow-up on the question that I asked?
On a wetland question and delineation.
Oh, can I just finish mine first?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, I thought you were.
No, I have a bunch, I'm sorry, I have a lot here, but I'm referring, a lot of my questions that I'm going to ask, I'm referring to, items that are in some of the documents that we have, so it's going to take me a couple minutes to pull things up, so I apologize.
No, I apologize.
No, I just need to, I want to quote some things that were said in mainly this 2007 Kingsmark study. All right, I'm going to actually let Mr. Duglo-Kecke, I need to gather some documents together, so if you can ask your questions.
Thank you,
right now.
Chairman. Yes, Mr. Chairman. As you are aware, the type of analysis to determine wetlands under the state regulatory scheme and the Army Corps of Engineers differs by definition. Was the site evaluated using the Army Corps of Engineer criteria as well?
For the record, my name is Megan Raymond, professional wetland scientist, soil scientist with SLR. Yes, all of the wetlands on the site were delineated based on both methodologies. Obviously, our state statutes delineate wetlands based on soil characteristics, poorly drained, very poorly drained alluvial or floodplain soils. And the Army Corps of Engineers with Waters of the US define wetlands based on the presence of called the 3-parameter approach, which are soils, vegetation, and hydrology. We would characterize with the SLR, only the SLR delineation, we would characterize all of the wetlands that we delineated in August of 2023 as state and federal wetlands. The additional wetlands that were added to the plan following the revision from the reviewer in the 2006 wetlands, we would characterize this particular area. Well, I guess I'm sorry, I'm not screen sharing, but neither of those systems that were added on in the with the 2006 wetlands would be federal wetlands. Those are only state regulated.
You will find and testify if necessary that you evaluate the site, use the criteria that is separate under the Army Corps of Engineering. And of course, the state delineation is not being questioned, but you do state clearly, you evaluate the whole site, every bit of it, using the methodology and the definitions under the Army Corps of Engineer regulations.
That's correct. The audio is not coming through as clearly through the Zoom, but I think I heard your question, which was, did I evaluate the site, the entire site under the Army Corps and the state definitions or regulations for delineation?
Naturally,
maybe just, I'm sorry, I guess just repeat so I won't garble it.
I apologize, I'm not letting you speak. I apologize. Did you delineate the entire site when you were evaluating it for the state wetlands delineation? In addition, utilizing the methodology, which you know is different, you can have wetlands that are, because of the soil types, are not wetlands for Connecticut purposes, but it can be for Army Corps of Engineer purposes. And especially in light of some of the video that was displayed and made part of the record today, I said to myself, wow, I bet the Army Corps of Engineer delineation would probably be greater. I only know that not as a qualified soil scientist, but working with soil scientists, limnologists, and other environmental professionals. And I've done a lot of permitting work before the Army Corps of Engineers. And I know that sometimes there can be vast differences because of the difference in definition. So I'm asking you for the record, did you delineate the entire site utilizing the criteria under the Army Corps of Engineers wetlands regulations?
Yes, yes, we did. That is a typical practice. And in general, actually, it's flip-flop from the way that you presented. Generally, what happens is that you have more wetlands that are state regulated than federal regulated wetlands. And that is the case on this particular site. You have more state wetlands given the addition of these 2006 fingers than you do have federal wetlands. So the answer to your question is yes.
Is that information embodied in your environmental site assessment and soils delineation that you also evaluate the criteria using the Army Corps too? And if it isn't,
that particular information is included in our delineation methodology in the very first section that describes the methodology used to identify the wetlands. And then it is again reiterated in the wetland impact assessment, which then goes on to characterize further the classifications and the wetland types that were initially described in the soil report. So again, the answer to your question is yes.
okay, thank you very much for the information.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
You're welcome. Okay. Now, I have a couple more questions regarding, I'm referencing the Southwest Conservation District report dated October 31st. And on page 2, there were about 7 or 8 items that were missing from the plans. And I just want to know if all those were addressed. I know we did proposed alternatives, locations and species of existing trees and vegetation, water course data, biological data, probable effects of changes on vegetation and wildlife, location of all percolation pits, test pits, and observation holes, and physical data of the material to be deposited and or excavated. I'm not sure if all those were addressed or not.
Hello again, Megan Raymond. I think that question is likely for me. I don't know if it's specifically directed to me, but I'm happy to answer it. All of that information is included in our wetland impact assessment report. Yes, the majority of the information that you just described. The one thing is that you like percolation test, the percolation test, perk test that would be on the engineering plans. But in terms of the ecological communities and the characterization of the upland types and more information about the water course and the kind of the biological and ecological elements, those are included in the report we submitted tonight.
Perfect. Thank you. And how much fill would be brought in? Is any fill going to be brought into the site? How much or how much would be excavated and taken away from the site? And if it's in here, I just haven't seen it yet.
We did analyze the earthwork on the site, and our response, I believe, it noted that the custom fills are going to use the native material that's on the site. We do not anticipate any import of common fill in order to build this project out. The only imported earth material would be for like road base or structural fill that would be necessary to build the roads and the buildings. Well, there wouldn't be a need to import fill otherwise.
Okay. And any blasting on the site?
The published soils data shows that bedrock is deep. We do have plans for geotechnical work to be done on the site. Borings that will be done in geotechnical analysis that would be related to the structural design. It would provide guidance for structural design for foundations, etc. We have not conducted any of that drilling yet. And going back to the prior question about percolation tests, we concede that the property has high groundwater and low permeable soils, and we are not designing for infiltration, so therefore we feel that percolation tests are not necessary to support the design.
Okay, thank you. And then also on the Southwest report dated from October 31st on page 6, talking about the curve number calculations. They suggested reviewing the curve number calculations in the SLR drainage report in watersheds 11 and 12. The post-development area percentages are less for impervious surfaces and buildings than the present conditions. I'm just wondering if you addressed that in the.
We did, we provided a detailed response.
And then in the last meeting, I did talk about a wildlife study that we are very interested, well, I am at least, and I don't know if the other commissioners are or not, but since this is, I'm gonna call it the sensitive area, but I don't know what the definition of sensitive is. Maybe, actually, Megan, can I go and ask you about that? Because one of the members of the public was actually wondering what, you said the area was not sensitive, and I'm just wondering what the scientific definition of that is that I'm guessing that we're referring to.
Sure. I mean, so there's a lot to this, but I can summarize it as such. The ecologies and the landscape position of the property don't reveal any any communities of that are particularly responsive to perturbations and environmental changes, and that's evidenced through the composition of the plant community out there that's largely dominant throughout the site, which is a non-native successional woodland and shrubland in the upland. And so, and you're surrounded by development and roadways. You know, we have a roadway to the south, we have a roadway to the north, and so this area exists within this zone of development. And so when we look at what those types of habitats tend to prefer, or tend to provide basic habitat services for, which would be breeding, shelter, food sources, would be your generalist species. There's not a lot of native plant material on the site that would provide or sustain wildlife species. That being said, again, throughout this process, we've testified to the fact that there's a high value wetland and a high functioning wetland on the site, and those are just distinct differences. What I would consider to be a sensitive wetland ecology would be something like a white cedar swamp or a bog or a fen that has very sensitive perturbations with hydrology or movement. On this site, where we have a perennial stream corridor bordered by emergent wetlands, the point there, and again, we don't need to really get into too many of the myopic details, but the point there is that this is an area that has sustained this high function in light of all the disturbance around it in the surrounding upland. As it relates to a wildlife study, we have not performed a wildlife study on the site. That's not a typical part of a wetland proceeding, unless you got into the need for, or there were identified habitats for vernal pools or state listed flora fauna. What we have done, though, and what you'll see in the ecological or in the wetland impact assessment, is that we did map and identify the areas of ecological communities on the property, and from there you can infer like basic wildlife usage. So that's how we address that comment.
Okay, and I was just, when I was reading the Southwest report from 2007, they talked about the significance of this being a wet meadow, so that you don't think that would fall into a sensitive category, being a wet meadow, the fact that there aren't very many of them in the state.
Wow. I mean, there's a number of, the things with meadows is that meadows, through ecological succession, meadows become more, they are not as, they success to shrubland, to woodland over time. And so meadows typically need management. On this particular site, because the hydrology of the corridor, it's suppressing a variety of, in the nature of the soils, it's suppressing a variety of woody plant establishment, except on the periphery as the ground gets a little higher. But I would not look at a wet meadow. If you look at a wet meadow in terms of like, it's a globally secure ecology. And so I don't, again, this particular wet meadow is it's a nice habitat, as we said throughout, but it's not, I don't think of it as a sensitive area.
Does anybody have any questions on the commission? All right, well, just one thing that I think has, in my mind, a little bit lacking is just the effects on the wildlife and the habitat. We've talked about impact on wetlands. You know, we've talked about how it's unavoidable, but yet nobody's talked about, well, what's there now and how can we ensure that they can live in an environment, whatever animals live there, whatever kind of trout are in the brook. I believe we have trout in the brook there.
Yeah, I just asked a question.
Oh, excuse me, I'll have to,
Well, when you finish.
yes, thank you. I just feel like we haven't addressed the impacts of the development, the proposed development on the future of this site. We've seen videos of the floodplain, that it's doing its job, I guess, it's keeping the water from going downstream. But we haven't addressed what's going to happen to the animals that live there, or to the plants that are already there. Like, what happens when, as somebody else mentioned, that, you know, the 600 cars drip fluids and end up in the stream. So I'd like to see a little, I don't know if we can do a study, I think it's in our regulations, that we can have some type of study done on the impact on the wildlife. I don't know how anybody else feels about that on the commission. Tracy or Brian, do you have any opinions on that?
Tracy, we can't hear you.
Idea what the wildlife in the area is.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
It is the.
Go ahead, Tracy.
Oh, Tracy, we can't hear, oh, 1 second, guys. Tracy, we can't hear you.
She's got nothing.
Oh, you have nothing, okay, all right. So I don't know if anyone from BNL looked at that when you did your review. I know we were still waiting on more from Southwest. So we haven't heard anything back from them. And they're going to be looking at the wildlife impact as well. We don't know.
I'm not sure if that's the thing.
You asked them.
We didn't require that, but we didn't ask of them when we did our initial.
Okay,
Well, if the plan is to keep the public hearing open, that is something we can
Yeah.
ask them and hopefully.
yeah, I would like to get some information from a third party on this. So if Southwest is the place to go, I'd like to do that. But we still have a lot of information to go through here. And so we'll have to continue the public hearing. Does the, you know, you would need an extension to continue this?
Yeah, that's fine.
You had something prepared,
Yes,
an extension?
yes.
And did you give it to the
Yes.
staff yet?
You got
Okay.
3 or 4 people right here.
Okay, and just 1 second. I'm gonna ask if anybody else, I think somebody had something to say.
Yeah.
Okay, if anybody else needs to speak from the public, please come up and state your name.
Two. We need two.
And if you could sign in, please. Oh, you already did.
Samuel Lansman, 20 West Road. I know you've been asking about vernal pools. I heard you in this other meeting. I may be able to help point you towards some of that if you're interested.
Is he an expert?
No, I am not.
But,
I make no claim. You have to go look at it yourself.
well, if there's a potential for something out there, I'd like to see it or have somebody point it out to me.
I think it would,
If somebody,
it would
maybe
be,
Megan Raymond can go back out.
How would that work?
You know, I know that people who live near property often have a better sense of what's going on. You know, I have wetlands behind my house and I hear peepers, you know, every March, so.
it's an unprofessional opinion. I think it would be considered an intermittent vernal pool.
Well,
My
I
sense
think
of it.
if we could get somebody to come out, Megan Raymond could maybe go back out again. If,
You can request that.
It's almost inaccessible from the applicant's property. You're welcome to walk down my property. You can walk right to it.
would you be able to, you'd allow access and
Yes.
show us where?
Yes.
Would you be able to do that, Megan? One of the residents here thinks there could be a vernal pool near his property.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's nothing on the subject site, and I guess we could talk to the client. I'm happy to take a walk with you. It's not the time to actually discern or determine definitively that things are breeding in a wetland, but certainly you can see the morphology and characterize an area as a potential vernal pool at this time. But we're looking, generally these vernal pools we're looking at confined, isolated depressions within a forested area, that we just don't have that type of habitat on the subject property. But there certainly could be areas adjacent that could provide.
Open drains periodically.
Okay.
The subject property.
Yeah,
Okay, well-
again, I'm not sure the relevance. Maybe we could look at it on a map first to see if it's necessary for us to take a look. But again, we're at the commission's disposal here, so I'm definitely not saying no. I think we might need a little bit more information.
I didn't think it was gonna make any difference because you keep asking about it.
Well, I want to make sure it's something we don't miss. It's something that, because you don't see them all, that you can't necessarily tell unless you're an expert. You can't tell if it's a vernal pool or not, but they're very important and they're protected, so certainly.
Again, I want to be clear though, that we're not saying that this is on the subject property. This is not on our site.
So the resident believes that there is something potentially on the applicant's property. That's why he's bringing it up.
Interesting, yeah.
You go out there
Well,
and,
certainly if that's the case, then we should take a look at that, but
thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Do we have your information so we can contact you?
I won't leave from here, I'll make sure.
When you emailed us those videos, did you have contact information in there?
We'll get the info.
We'll get it
I'll make
from-
sure you have it.
I wrote your name down, so I have it too.
I have your right.
Okay, oh, you have something you need to say?
Yeah, I just want to say one or two things, that's it, I'm done.
Okay, could you state your name and address, please?
Yeah, Louis Lugori, 1075 River Avenue.
Okay.
We do know, sir, bear, deer, rabbit, bobcats, trouts, good trout in that area. That area right there is very fertile. We all go down there to mix and mingle, drink, whatever they do, and they go back and they go on their way. But I actually seen bear. I was like, I lived in my house for 65 years, bear. And then I want to get back to the wetlands. That picture, is that lady still on up there? That upper picture there, that it looks like just like a stream coming down on the upper corner here, Webb Road, Hill Street, Worcester, whatever the hell it comes down. Well, that area there right now is what catches the water. The area they want to put the upper driveway, that's where the water runoff is for all that area. A fancy house, I'll say, the richer houses up there. And then you got up by the trailer park up there, and you got Worcester Road and all that. That all comes barreling down through that area. And there's actually a cut in the road. They just paved that road, by the way, too. They're gonna want to cut out. They just paved that road, and that all goes down into that area. It goes down right into what catches it is the wetlands. You imagine a 24-foot driveway in there? We basically have a roller skating park or whatever.
Thank you.
It's terrible.
Thank you. Okay, so, oh, would you like to speak?
I'm sorry, just reiterate here. So the meeting
We just
we're
need
having
your
here is the wetlands.
Name and
Could you
address.
state your name and address, please?
Jeffrey Doy, 255 Webb Road, second appearance of the council. This lady may not be a specialist in the animal world. This is a wetlands meeting, and I've
was told on a previous meeting, we can't talk about some of these things with the animals. Now, you're bringing it up, and I'm sure your concern is positive. Just like a lot of people here have very good personal interruptions with all the animals that are there, and there are lots, and I'm not going to go and repeat them. I've seen them all, from herons to beavers. This is a very critical habitat for wild animals. I don't think it's going to be completely destroyed. I'm sorry, it doesn't matter how much protection they're going to put in. So if we are going to talk about the wildlife, I think there's a lot of people here that are going to have plenty to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
I haven't spoken yet, I'm not signed in.
Okay, would you please, sign in? Please, thank
I'll
you.
sign in soon.
Okay, thank you.
All right, my name is Scott Clemens, I live at 1233 Rubber Avenue. I am a builder. I've worked on sites that were nowhere near as bad as this. But I do know, once you start excavating this site, with the deluges we have now, there's no way you're gonna stop all that runoff. With the muck and all the other crap, going right into that brook. Because there's no way you can contain these deluges on that site. You can't let any construction happen.
Thank you.
Wargo Grave, 1060 Rubber Avenue, once again, in regards to wildlife crossing. Wildlife establishes a path, it's kind of historic. Once they go that way forever through generations, which is why when you have a highway, they still continue to cross the highway at that same spot for the next 100,000 years. In our cases, we have a huge connection to the upper forest on top of, I want to say Hunter's Mountain. The top of the mountain for now, Wilmot's property. They all travel down Wilmot's property, across the street behind Mr. Ligoria's house, cross through the swamp to access water primarily. I don't think they're looking for food, perhaps the bear, maybe fish, but we have everything crossing at that point at the foot of our driveway as well. And if you traverse the site, you'll see these established paths. You can't miss them. It's the places where the animals, all different sizes, they all use the same path. And once you obstruct that with a road or heavy grading, they're gonna still try to go through there. You end up with more instances of traffic encountering wildlife, hitting wildlife, obviously because they're still trying to access that same source of water through the same means that they have been. This is just something I wanted to point out because that is an aspect of the site. It's an important aspect of the site. The woodland area above the trail is wide open, the bridle trail.
Yeah.
Which is basically directly out from all this. Everything sort of crosses through that area. And that is one of the arteries that's still open. So if you close that artery, they're still gonna try to go through. And I think that obstruction is gonna cause some issues. Definitely.
Could I, so I'm sorry to interject, but this is Megan Raymond again. There's very clear statute on the ability for a wetland commission to regulate wildlife, and maybe I'm not sure if attorney town council would like to. Is that a time to opine on that, or?
There is a statutory provision that deals specifically with the ability of the jurisdiction of the Wetlands Commission to regulate in connection with.
You turned it off.
Sorry, regulate in connection with the wildlife. There has to be a relationship between the damage to wetlands and the damage to the species that it's supporting. So it's respectfully a lot of the wildlife that's mentioned are not part of those types of species that are contemplated in wetlands under the wetlands jurisdiction, but there are some that are. I know that that's what Megan's referring to. The commission has taken the position that it's going to allow information into the record, and has been pretty liberal about allowing pretty much any information that is could be closely relevant. Certainly, personal observations about perhaps obligate species in these wetland or what are wetland areas it could be relevant, and not all the comments have been pertinent, but some may be. So I think the best way to handle this would be to have the scientists go out with, perhaps, the gentleman, Mr. Landsman, was that Mr. Landsman? Mr. Landsman, and a member of the staff. And perhaps the borough engineer. Thank you. I'm not included in this lineup, but I
need legal counsel.
I think it would be helpful to at least address the concerns and you know, Megan Raymond, who is a registered soil scientist, is willing to make that trip, and I think it's something that could be helpful to the commission.
Right, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I agree, and I still want to know what Southwest Soil thinks about the impact on wildlife. It's an impact on the wetlands, that's what we're here to do, but when that impact on the wetlands affects the wildlife, then we do have jurisdiction, is that correct?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit more
I know.
refined than that, but let's just say that that's a good start.
Right, so we do have jurisdiction over the wildlife if it affects the wetlands, you know, we can't just say, you know, there's deer there, you know, the deer are gonna be chased away. It has to affect the wetlands as well, so. I just wanted to clarify that for everybody in the public who might not understand that part of our regulation. Okay, and I'm going to allow just a few more minutes of public comment, for people who haven't spoke since you're here. I don't want to send you away, but I just want to remind everybody that we will be back here next month. The applicant asked for an extension on this hearing. So, you know, you'll have a chance next month as well. So take some time to digest what you heard tonight and come back and see us next month if you have more questions.
What's the date?
January 3rd, I believe it is. Wednesday will be in the same location. Okay, go ahead.
I'm Gil Kirby. I live at 86 Prime Ridge Road. And it just coincidentally, now that we're talking about deer and animals and wildlife, I happen to be coming back on the 2nd of November after last month's meeting the next morning. And right in front of me, it appears this deer is supporting Ms. Burnett for the Burgess office. And he moved down the street, and you can see in the background of this picture, the Westover sign. So we do have deer. I've seen either the same deer or similar deer that have crossed on Webb Road in front of me down near Westover Drive as I turn up to go up to my street. And I have a concern from the standpoint of the water impact. All these buildings going up and getting in place, how that is going to impact the aquifer and all of the runoff for all of the animals. You know, and it's also an impact for all the people who have wells such as myself. My well is 310 feet deep. And I've got a concern that if we start disrupting all of the soil down through that area, we're going to stir it up. And I don't think that that's a good thing for us to be doing. So I will leave you with these pictures and then I'll sign in for you.
Thank you. So right now I'm going to close the public hearing.
No.
Sorry, not close it. Continue it. Close public comment. I apologize. And we'll continue the public hearing January 3rd in this location, 6:45 p.m. And all the information that was given to the commission tonight will be on the borough website. If you would like to pull it up, download it, print it out, it'll all be on there. Thank you. Closing the hearing at 9:50.
No, continuing the hearing.
I'm sorry.
You're closing it for this, you're closing this part of the public hearing.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, so you all will be at IELD. You feel, and then you don't think the exact address.
Because all have to record
The meeting is still going on. Please keep quiet. We have to continue with our regular stuff.
Can we take a 5-minute recess, please? Okay, all right, we'll go back into our regular meeting agenda at 10:06.
To the minutes.
Laughing. Like to go into item 2, review and approval of the November 1st, 2023 meeting minutes. Does anybody have any comments or changes?
I have a question.
Wendy?
Hold on, on the page, I'm on page 8, under section E. It looks like the sentence says they are still working on the roof, comma, and then the word the, and there's nothing else. Did you just fall asleep? Did you blank out? Was there no other words?
She's
Are we
been,
supposed to fill it in ourselves?
she's been slacking.
It was just, you're reading the minutes.
The phone must have been, like, the what? Okay.
Okay, Michelle will correct that.
I needed a coffee.
That's the only thing I saw.
Okay, great. All right. I'd like to make a motion. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes from November 1st, 2023.
I'll make it.
Well, you can second it.
Wendy and will second.
Yeah.
All those in
Correction
favor?
is noted.
Aye.
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 Tracy said yes.
All right, motion carries. And then, public comment. Guess nobody's here from the public. Okay, and old business, mission, discussion decision regarding application IW 2308 for proposed development, Long Meadow Apartments to be located over multiple parcels on Webb Road and River Avenue, applicant Apartments at Long Meadow LLC. The public hearing is continued till next month. And, oh, we already did item B, and then new business, we've already done. Correspondence? Any correspondence, Lori?
None. Well, just the correspondence we receive under this application.
Okay, and thank you, and all that's online?
Online.
Okay, and how about the WEO report?
Okay, let me just go through application IW 2109 545 Church Street. Eric Durante has sent in the letter. Like I was requested, he reached out to me. He wants to withdraw. He's not gonna do anything right now. What happened was all the money he had put aside to do this, he lost his second job. And he doesn't have 40 hours on the first one, so he's been using the money to pay for basically mortgage and stuff, so. I talked to Tracy about it on my way to drop off her package, so I'd like to just take it off the agenda. And I will tell him that if he decides to move forward with anything, he'll come back before us.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, the next one, B, application IW 2008, commercial development, 0 Prospect Street, applicant Magde, the Bobway and Hanse Tuadros. So Wayne has been out there, they now, they flagged for the, the borings, and that's as far as they got.
Okay.
So keep it
Progress.
on.
Progress.
The bridge looks good.
Okay, 10 to 67 May Street monitor, that's Shagufta's, she's not gonna do anything, so we're gonna take that off. She's going to, when she wants to continue, she'll come back on. Okay, 393 River Avenue, I talked to Tracy, I have not been out there, I'm gonna go out there in the next couple of weeks. This is Auto House, he just has to move the stuff away from the brook. So I will be out there. Next one, application IW 2303 707 709, they're still working on that house, as you see, so when I go by, the silk fence and hay bales are still there. And that's quite a ways away from the brook at that. So everything's going good there. He just ran into a lot of building issues. And then the last one, Tracy asked me to keep on. This is for the pedestrian walkway. Marty has not started that yet. For 47 Prospect Street for his bridge. He's working with an engineer now to have to come up with his engineered bridge. And then he will work with building and get his building permits to put it on. And is he going before zoning?
I got nothing.
Is he going to though? Did you want him to?
I don't see why we would. I mean, the only thing he's doing is putting a bridge in that's going over the river.
And that's it. No administrative business that I know of.
Okay, to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Tracy, do you want a second?
Thumbs
All right,
up.
Tracy, second. All right, meeting adjourned at 10:12.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. See you in the new year.
Yeah.
See you in person in the new year, Tracy.
I'm gonna hire.
Yeah.
All right, good night.
What?